Chapter 590. Ever since the green ducks flew back to the tribe, the eyes of the people who had seen the ducks lit up. Especially Bai Gua, who used to pick up duck eggs happily in the tribe on the other side of the sea. Now, his eyes were glued to the green ducks in the sky. The green ducks had flown back. Did that mean he could pick up duck eggs again? Here, build a duck shed. No, build two. Maybe they'll attract other wild ducks here, Xiao Xian said to the man in charge of the animal pens. The man in charge of the animal pens nodded. Okay, let's build the duck shed like the one we had in the tribe. Although they called it a duck shed, the duck sheds back then were already built to be as good as the houses the tribesmen lived in. Yes, let's build it like the old ones. I don't know what the weather will be like this year, but it'll be better for them to get used to it, Xiao Xian said. The tribesmen had put in a lot of effort to make these ducks stay willingly. The green ducks that followed Xiao Xian here were obviously very satisfied with the artificial lake. After Xiao Xian stopped walking, the leading duck flew directly to the surface of the lake, folded its wings, and dipped its neck into the water. Then it raised its head and waved. There aren't many fish in the lake. I'll go get some food for them, the man in charge of the duck shed left happily. These green ducks also ate fish, and their diet was even more varied than other wild ducks. This could be seen from their mouths full of sharp teeth. There were fish in this artificial lake, but they were only small fish that slipped in when the river water was introduced. Now that the river had receded, these fish were still here. They had grown up, but there weren't many of them. Perhaps during the 4 years that Yanjiao wasn't here, other fish-eating birds lived nearby. When he returned, Xiao Xian even saw some bird poop and feathers by the lake. Now, they would also introduce water from the river. However, other than the piranhas, there weren't many other aquatic animals in the river. If he wanted to get some edible fish that weren't too aggressive, he would have to find other fish. Thinking of this, Xiao Xian made a mental note of this. If he went hunting in the future, he would use the net to catch some fish and see if he could get some suitable fish to raise in the lake. The people responsible for raising the ducks were all experienced. Whether they were from the other side of the sea or from the old haunt, they had already mastered many techniques. Even if it was the first time for many people to come in contact with these ducks, after interacting with their companions, they could quickly learn how to raise the ducks. The duck feed was made according to the same recipe as before. The person in charge of raising the ducks had even made some improvements. Even though many of the ingredients were no longer the same, the group of green ducks would still eat them. Perhaps they were tired and hungry from the long journey. More than 50 green ducks gathered around the trough and began to eat. At first, the other ducks were hesitant, but when they saw that their father was leading the way, they followed suit. Xiao Xian glanced at the green duck that was eating the most. Even if it had lost weight due to various reasons, once life was stable, it would definitely swell up again and return to its previous size. When the group of ducks started eating, Xiao Xian noticed that a smaller duck had a cloth tied around its leg. Looking at the stains on the cloth, it should have been there for a while. The way it was tied was also very professional and familiar. When the Taiha people suffered external injuries, after applying medicine, they would tie it with sackcloth or other things that could be tied. The knot on the smaller green duck's leg was the knot that the Taiha people usually used. Xiao Xian did not catch the duck that was fighting with its brothers and sisters for food. Instead, he waited for it to finish eating before catching it. With his experience in dealing with fat ducks, Xiao Xian could easily subdue this small duck. Xiao Xian untied the cloth on the duck's leg and looked at the part where the cloth was tied. Over there was a scar that had already healed. Now, it was almost healed. The scar had already faded, and there were many fluffy feathers growing there. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to see the scar that was about to disappear under the fine fluffy feathers. There was also some powder that was obviously different in color from the duck's feathers. That was the residue of the medicine that had been applied. Because the cloth was tied so well, the dregs of the medicine did not completely disappear. They were left behind along with the cloth. When they left the tribe on the other side of the sea, the Taiha people said that they would take good care of these ducks. From this, it seemed that the Taiha people had indeed done so. He released the duck that he had subdued. Once it was free, it ran to the fat duck's side and stared at Xiao Xian cautiously. But the fat duck looked at Xiao Xian and continued to eat. Just now, when Xiao Xian caught the duck, it turned its head to look. But that was it. After looking, it continued to eat. The other ducks had already finished, but it continued to eat. Xiao Xian left the matters here to the person in charge of rearing the ducks. Then he spoke to the people patrolling the area. Even if they wanted to continue rearing these green ducks, if they were a threat to the tribe, they would not be merciful. These green ducks were not normal wild ducks. It was always good to be cautious, especially the smaller ones. They had no impression of the Yanjiao people. After leaving the man-made lake, Xiao Xian went up the mountain and told the shaman and chief about the cloth on the duck's leg. Speaking of the Taiha tribe, Zheng Luo and Duo Kang missed them. Duo Kang's eyes turned. When should we go and get the Taiha people to come over? The Taiha people liked strange herbs. In the depths of the forest, there was a patch of green that the advance party used to go to. There were countless rare plants. If the Taiha people were here, they would definitely love it. Xiao Xian also said that if the two continents were really close to each other like the Rain tribe said, and Rock Hill City had old grievances with the slave masters on the other side of the sea, there was an 80 to 90% chance that a war would break out. Rock Hill City had made so many preparations, they weren't just there to drink tea and chat. If that happened, the people on the other side of the sea might not have a peaceful life. The Taiha people might be affected on the other side and their lives might not be as good. If they moved over, they could still be neighbors with Yanjiao. Plus, the Taiha tribe was more reliable than the other tribes. If they joined forces with the Taiha tribe, they would be able to stabilize Yanjiao. Now, all the tribes were starting to gather together. Right, there were also those gold weapons. If the Taiha people came over, they had to show them the gold weapons made by the Yanjiao people. Before the new bronze weapons were made, there was a record of which warrior's preferred weapon was written down. Then, the quota was allocated according to merit. Warriors who contributed more to the tribe would naturally get their weapons earlier. Duo Kang had a list of names in his hands. It was arranged according to their contributions. When it was their turn, Duo Kang would call them over for questioning. Then, he would let the craftsmen in charge of forging the weapons according to the type and appearance of the weapons that the soldiers were used to. When he saw the Taiha tribe again, he believed that there would be a lot of new bronze wares in the tribe. Zheng Luo and Duo Kang had the same idea. They were looking forward to the day the Taiha people saw the new bronze weapons made by Yanjiao. They wondered what their expressions would be like. Chapter 591. Because of the fat duck's arrival, Xiao Xian thought about the results of the knot divination. He finally understood where the knot was pointing. This forest was not the only place in that direction. The knot was pointing to a place even further away, on another continent. Most of the birds in the sky must have flown over from the other continent. The green duck must have migrated along with the birds. It happened to encounter Yanjiao and stopped here. Looking at it this way, it was possible that the birds were migrating due to the change in weather. In the past 2 winters, this continent had been unusually hot. If it was the complete opposite on the other side, it would have been extremely cold. Looking at it this way, the birds might have sensed a warmer place and decided to migrate to avoid the cold. Looking at the green duck swimming leisurely in the lake, it did not look like it was in trouble, nor did it look like it sensed danger. Hence, the possibility of a natural disaster was very low. After knowing this, the restlessness in the tribe calmed down for the time being. Actually, after settling down, Xiao Xian had been thinking about what the tribe should do in the future. In the past, when the river in front of the tribe was still an insurmountable moat, living here was like living in isolation from the rest of the world. They would not see any outsiders. But now, the moat was gone. Even the unknown and terrifying obstacles in the sky were gone. Cha-Cha could fly back and forth every day without meeting any obstacles. After arriving, Xiao Xian could roughly guess why Cha-Cha did not return with the other great mountain eagles from its movements and cries. Normally, great mountain eagles would only fly to Eagle Mountain when they were at a stage in their growth. For example, young eagles that had never been to Eagle Mountain after hatching but had already reached their limit. Yes, young eagles. To great mountain eagles, eagles that had never been to Eagle Mountain were all young eagles. The other type of eagle that went to Eagle Mountain was an adult eagle that had once again entered the stagnant growth stage. They had already begun to age, and if they did not go to Eagle Mountain, they would continue to age until they died. Once they successfully entered Eagle Mountain and came out, they would undergo a complete transformation and enter the next stage of growth. In theory, a giant mountain eagle was also a type of beast that could grow indefinitely. No one told them this. It was a conditioned reflex that originated from their bloodline, just like how they would eat when they were hungry and drink when they were thirsty. Once they entered that period, they would have a natural instinct that would tell them where to fly and find a solution to their problem. However, Cha-Cha was not a young eagle, nor had it entered a stagnant growth stage. It had to take a greater risk to go to Eagle Mountain, so it had to stay there longer than other eagles. Among the eagles that went to Eagle Mountain at the same time, only Cha-Cha behaved so willfully that the other eagles thought he was courting death. Therefore, when Cha-Cha finally came out of Eagle Mountain, the other eagles had already left. When Cha-Cha wanted to fly to the fearsome Beast Mountain Forest, it realized that a disaster was coming. Whether it was underwater, on the ground, or in the sky, everything was changing. Cha-Cha did not dare to run around, so it tried to fly along the route that Xiao Xian had taken with it. Then it flew along the Yanjiao hunting area and flew to the place where Yanjiao used to live. Cha-Cha chased away the other birds and beasts that lived there, then waited for the disaster to end. That was how the rest of the story came to be. In fact, Cha-Cha would have flown there if not for the invisible barrier in the sky above the river. Even though the river was no longer there, Cha-Cha was still afraid. The scene it saw when it left with Xiao Xian in the canoe was deeply engraved in its mind. Therefore, after the disaster ended, it dawdled for a while. When it was sure that the barrier in the sky was gone and it was about to fly to the fearsome Beast Mountain Forest, the Yanjiao team actually came. With the barrier in the sky and the river gone, there were more and more exchanges between the two sides of the river. The pontoon bridge was still there, and the tribe could not continue to live here in seclusion like before. They would have to interact with more people, and every tribe had their own strengths and characteristics that were worth learning. Back then, Yanjiao lived alone in seclusion because of natural isolation. They could not interact with outsiders, but now it was different. They could only broaden their horizons by interacting more. Moreover, they still had to gather information, especially about the desert and the other continent. Let's not talk about the distant future. Even now, the end of the year winter was getting closer and closer. People in the tribe still wanted to trade the animal skins they hunted for other things. The pontoon bridge could only bear a limited amount of weight, and it was not very stable. Later on, the river level rose and the river width increased, making the pontoon bridge less reliable. When Xiao Xian and the others came, the width of the river was only 200 or 300 meters. Now, the water level had gradually risen to 600 or 700 meters. Although it had stopped rising, once winter ended and the ice and snow in the upper reaches melted, the river level might change seasonally. Moreover, there was still the rainy season. Therefore, the tribes on both sides of the river were prepared. The Ji tribe had originally planned to rebuild their tribe, but they retreated 200 meters away from the river bank, just in case. On the Yanjiao side, there was no need to worry about their living quarters. However, they had to pay more attention to the low-lying farmlands. The tribe did not count on the pontoon bridge made of wooden rafts floating on the river. Now, Yanjiao had begun to build ships. In the future, when the expedition team went out to trade, they could learn from the longboat tribe and use a fleet. They could cross the river and go deep into the land. On the other side of the river, there were many tributaries that flowed into the river, so the fleet could go straight in. Xiao Xian had been thinking about this for the past few days. Since the tribe had decided to settle down here, and the river was no longer as intimidating as it used to be, there would definitely be more people coming and going from this river. Until now, the river in front of the tribe still didn't have a name. If the expedition team went to other places to trade, and someone asked where the Flaming Horns lived, how would they answer? Would they say, "We live on the other side of the river"? There were so many rivers, who knew which one they were talking about? Not every tribe knew about the dangerous river that used to be. However, since this river was related to Yanjiao for 1,000 years, why not name it after some words related to the Yanjiao tribe? It wasn't popular to name streams and lakes these days. Tribesmen usually used the method of demarcating their territory. If it was within their own territory, it would be their own section of the river. Or if it was completely within the territory of the drumming tribe, they would name it. They did not care about rivers that were not in their territory. Even the Longboat tribe's famous Boat River Fire legend did not name the river that their fleet often passed by. Then Yanjiao would set a precedent. The river in front of the Yanjiao tribe, the Yanjiao River? That didn't sound too good. That would make it sound like the entire river belonged to the Flaming Horn tribe. The river was so long that even if the Flaming Horn tribe wanted to expand, they couldn't really take this endless river into their territory. The Flaming River. After thinking of a few names, Xiao Xian went to the top of the mountain to discuss with the shamaness and chief. He told them his idea and made the final decision. Xiao Xian told them his idea. Zheng Luo, Ao, and the two shamanesses looked at him with eager eyes. This was a good idea. The shamaness had been thinking about how to make the Yanjiao tribe famous. But now was not the time to go on a crusade. Although many people knew about Yanjiao after the Battle of Wanshi, it was far from enough for her. As long as there was a chance, the shamaness would not reject it. Xiao Xian's suggestion was exactly what the shamaness wanted. They also wanted to name it Flaming Horn River, but they knew that it would be too much. It would cause the other tribes to be rebellious. There would definitely be more people from other tribes who would object. Then they would use their own tribes' names to name their own sections of the river. That would become a tribal dispute, and it might not last long. Then why don't we follow Xian's suggestion and call it Flaming River, said Zheng Luo. The shamaness thought for a moment and nodded. The others had no objections. The name, Flaming River, was decided just like that. The name of the river had been chosen, but not everyone knew this name. Even if they knew there was a flaming river, they might not know it was here. We can put up a stone tablet, said Xiao Xian. In many places, stone tablets or other signs would be used to tell outsiders the name of the place or object. That's right. We can put up a stone tablet. We can even carve a tribal totem on it. Let people know we named the river. Duo Kong rubbed his hands together. He was itching to make a stone tablet. After the decision was made, the tribe immediately took action. Xiao Xian used the fearsome beast bones he hunted some time ago to make 10 bone tablets. He engraved the name, Flaming River, on them and added the words, erected by the Flaming Horn tribe. Beside the tablets were the Flaming Horn totemic patterns. He planned to place them near the tribe. Although they did not name it Yanjiao River, it was not that far off. It was just more subtle. Other than the section near the tribe also sent a team of warriors to the other side of the river to put up stone tablets further upstream or downstream. As a result, some tribes that lived near the river often saw people who were easily carrying large stone tablets and setting them up by the river. Flaming River. Why was it called Flaming River? Some people were confused, some were unhappy. The Flaming Horn tribesman grinned and tossed the giant stone tablet into the ground. We call it Flaming River. What, you have a problem? No problem, don't be afraid. If you have a problem, just say it. Come, let's have a good chat. Chapter 592. Although most of the tribes along the river were damaged by the natural disaster, and many of them were directly wiped out, there were still some survivors who continued to live along the river. Not every tribe had the courage to move. Even though this place had been affected by the disaster, they were still unwilling to move. That was why when the Yanjiao people carried a large stone tablet with the name, Flaming River, on it and erected it along the river, many people saw it. It was also the first time they saw someone naming a river that wasn't part of their territory. Perhaps some people would still be unhappy, but the Yanjiao people weren't afraid. If they knew who changed the name again, they would go over and have a chat. Reason? No, there was no such thing as reason here. At times like this, it all depended on strength. Only the strong had the right to speak. In this area, no one dared to fight the Yanjiao directly. Knowing that the name of the Flaming River had started to spread around the river, the two shamans' faces became even more wrinkled. They smiled all day and even became addicted to naming things. They thought about naming the man-made lake, the mountains in the tribe, the boats. Because of the name debate, the two shamans started arguing again. However, the others didn't care about naming things. The people from the other side of the sea still had the habit of stocking up at the end of the year to trade. After arriving here, they stocked up on hides. Other than their daily necessities, they wanted to let the expedition team trade them. Even though there wasn't the royal city or any other cities here, many tribes had their own unique skills. Others couldn't learn them even if they wanted to. It depended on talent. They could also trade for many good things at the trading point. The boats were almost finished. With the addition of bronze wares, many stone and bone wares could be replaced by metal wares. They were close to the forest, so it was easier to get wood. They also had experience in building boats. When they were in the fearsome beast forest, the Longboat tribe had given them boats. Even though the boats were destroyed by the disaster, some of the craftsmen had figured out many techniques from the boats. Even though the boats they built couldn't compare to the Longboat tribe in many aspects, they had good materials, good wood, good metal wares and Xiao Xian's creative ideas. The boats they built this time were much better than the ones the tribe took when they left this place. The tunnel from the man-made lake to the Flaming River was already dug. They were just waiting for the ship to be built and the gates to be opened. Beside the artificial lake, the green duck was still leisurely swimming around with its second-generation ducks. Even the noise of the boat building did not scare them away. Sometimes, they would even come closer to watch curiously. After a few days, the green duck was no longer as skinny as it was during the migration. It had gained a lot of weight, and it was not far from the size Xiao Xian was familiar with. It wasn't just the green duck. Its second-generation ducks were also much more energetic. Their rejection of the tribesmen had lessened a lot. They would even step on the ducks' feet to beg for food when they saw someone feeding them. Yes, begging for food. The second-generation ducks had inherited their father's shamelessness and shamelessness. Since the living conditions here were so good, and there were people to protect and feed them, and they had a place to stay. They did not have to suffer from the cold or the rain, and there were no natural enemies to threaten them. They decided to stay here with their father. 3 days ago, when they saw a flock of birds passing by, they only raised their heads to take a look and didn't seem to want to fly away. Xiao Xian carried a huge tree to the lake. It was brought back by the people who went out to look for trees. He helped to carry it. How is it? How many more days do we need? Xiao Xian looked at the completed boat and asked the craftsman there. We'll be done in 2 days. We'll test the completed boat in the river tomorrow, said one of the craftsmen. After knowing the progress of the boat building, Xiao Xian did not want to delay them any longer. He put down the tree and prepared to leave. When he reached the river, he saw the people who took care of the duck shed coming over to feed the ducks. The ducks that were originally lined up to watch the craftsmen build the boat flapped their wings and rushed over. Some of them even started fighting. Ever since the tribe started feeding the ducks had become lazier. Now, other than when they were fighting for food, they rarely flew. He wondered if they would still be able to fly when they became as fat as balls. Xiao Xian went over to ask about the ducks. They're doing well. They're easier to raise than when we were in the other tribe. I just have to take care of the one in the lead. The other green ducks will follow it. The person who was feeding the ducks smiled. It's just a pity that we haven't seen any eggs yet. It's still too early to see any eggs. Xiao Xian went to the field to take a look. When he came back, the ducks had finished eating. The fat duck swayed from side to side as it walked, but it looked lazy and lazy. Seeing Xiao Xian walk over, the fat duck only glanced at Xiao Xian, then decided to find a place to squat. Xiao Xian went over to check the food trough. There was still some food left. According to the person who made the food, it was some crushed herbs. The ducks could eat it, but they didn't like it. The herbs were useful for the ducks. In the past, sick ducks would eat the herbs themselves, so the person who took care of the duck shed added them in. In the first few days, the ducks didn't care whether they liked it or not. They ate everything. Now, they gradually learned to be picky. They ate what they liked first, then came back to eat the rest when they were hungry. If they weren't hungry, they wouldn't eat. Xiao Xian looked at the fat duck that was looking for a place to rest. Tisk, look at how spoiled you are. Why don't you go to the sky? But just as Xiao Xian finished speaking, the fat duck really flew up. It wasn't just the fat duck. The other second-generation ducks also took off. Whether they were swimming in the lake or hiding in the grass, they all flapped their wings and took off. Xiao Xian. Did they really go to the sky? Were they planning to leave? But soon, Xiao Xian knew that the ducks weren't leaving. After they flew high, they rested on the trees and looked at the sky. The sky. What was there? Xiao Xian looked over. Soon, he heard the whistle from the guard in the tower. There's something in the sky. Xiao Xian looked around and found a tall tree to climb. In the sky, a flock of black figures flew over. It's a flock of birds. They weren't that surprised to see flocks of birds anymore. But this time, it was different. When the flock of birds flew past the tribe, the green ducks and their second-generation ducks followed. Just as Xiao Xian thought that they were going to escape, the fat duck stopped and quacked loudly in the direction of the flock of birds. In an instant, other than the cries of the flock of birds in the distance, the only sounds in the sky were the strange cries of the green ducks. Xiao Xian's eyes widened. He saw some birds leave the flock and fly over. Wild ducks, fuck. These fat ducks were really good at attracting wild ducks. Chapter 593. Every time a flock of birds passed by the tribe, Xiao Xian would observe them. Even if he could not see what the birds looked like, he could roughly guess the types of birds in the flock. He could estimate their size, speed and so on. At the start, the flock of birds were all large birds with many fearsome beasts. They were fast and had great stamina. Later on, they were more ordinary birds. The green duck was one of the last flocks. Perhaps it was special. If it was alone, it would not have landed in the flock of birds. It should have flown in the flock of birds in front. However, it had a family and a group of second-generation ducks. It was delayed for a long time. In the end, it could only wait. The flock of birds behind the green ducks was even more ordinary. The ones that left the flock because of the fat duck's call were the more ordinary wild ducks that Xiao Xian saw in the forest on the other side of the sea. These wild ducks had different feathers and habits, but they looked very similar. Xiao Xian classified them all as wild ducks. Back when he was at the tribe on the other side of the sea, the green duck attracted many wild ducks into the tribe. Now, the same thing happened again. However, this time, it was not just the fat duck. It brought its second-generation ducks with it. The wild ducks that flew over attracted the attention of many people who were busy working in the tribe. Those who had experienced the flock of ducks were very happy. With more ducks, there would be more duck eggs. The guards did not stop the wild ducks from coming closer. Hence, when the wild ducks left the flock, they followed the green ducks and landed on the artificial lake. The originally calm surface of the lake became much livelier. The wild ducks that landed took up almost a third of the lake. Moreover, the changes were still happening. The wild ducks were still landing. The flock of birds that flew past the edge of the tribe had not completely flown over. There were still many wild ducks in the area. However, without the green ducks' calls, they did not know what was happening here. I really underestimated them. Xiao Xian looked at the fat green duck on the lake and shouted, "Hey, duck!" The fat duck was leading the flock of ducks in the artificial lake. It slowly turned its neck and looked in Xiao Xian's direction. "You! Don't go up to the sky again." The fat duck turned its head and continued swimming forward, unsure if it understood. However, Xiao Xian noticed that the green duck had stopped flying. He let out a sigh of relief. Although the man-made lake had been expanded a little after they came back, it still couldn't handle the flock of green ducks that could attract wild ducks. The people taking care of the duck shed happily went to expand the duck shed. They were not worried that there would be too many ducks. Other than the green ducks, the wild ducks were not picky about their food. Duck food was easy to get and they did not have much of a burden. They had experience. 2 days later, the 5 newly built ships were tested on the lake. There were 50 to 100 people on each ship. There were about 300 people who left the tribe to trade, and the quota had already been decided. 5 boats painted with Yanjiao totems sailed out of the waterway between the lake and the river. Whoosh, the sails were raised. The flaming horn totem was drawn on the sails too. This was a good opportunity to make their presence known. The totem patterns on the sails were drawn by the 2 shamans themselves. When the wind blew, the sails curved in an arc, making the totem patterns on the 2 horns burn like flames. "We should be able to set sail now. Looks like there's no problem." Zheng Luo looked at the 5 boats that had sailed into the river. This time, the leader of the expedition was Ta. Duo Kong wanted to have some fun, but the expedition team didn't need 2 team leaders. He could only wait until the next time. After all, this wasn't the only time they would go on a trade trip. The people of the drumming tribe, who had already rebuilt their tribe, also saw the 5 boats with the flaming horn totem on the river. Their eyes were filled with envy. However, although they wanted Yanjiao boats, they did not feel the need to build their own. If they wanted to travel by water, they could just ride the crocodiles. The main reason why the drumming tribesmen were envious was because of the trade trip. If it weren't for the disaster, they would have many leftover water moonstones. They could even negotiate with Yanjiao to take them to further places to trade. Many of the drumming tribesmen had never traveled far before. The furthest most of the drumming tribesmen had ever been was the Pu tribe. In the past, they did not like to interact with unfamiliar tribes, but now their views were changing. Seeing Yanjiao travel, many of them naturally had the same idea. "Next year, when we get more water moonstones, we can pay off our debts. Maybe we can go with the Yanjiao team," said a drumming tribesman. "I've decided not to go to the Pu tribe to trade tomorrow. I'll save more water moonstones. In the future, if there's a chance to go with the Flaming Horn tribe's ship, we can go to further places to see." "The Flaming Horn tribe is better than the Pu tribe," another warrior said. Not only them, the other drumming tribesmen also had similar thoughts. Many of them secretly made up their minds and prayed that the tribe would be able to harvest more water moonstones next year. Otherwise, if the production of water moonstones decreased, they would have nothing left to live on when the debt was repaid. They would have nothing left to live on. During the trial voyage, Xiao Xian rowed the boat along the flaming river for a while. He went to the Rain tribe to check on their rebuilding progress. The drumming tribe was rebuilding on their original foundation, but the Rain tribe was starting from scratch. It was more troublesome and required more work. Like many tribes with primitive fire seeds, the first thing the Rain tribe built was a fire pit. Then they built houses for the important people in the tribe. After that, they built houses for the rest of the tribe. When Xiao Xian arrived, the Rain tribe had already finished building their houses. They were reclaiming farmland and building animal pens. They didn't have anything yet. They mainly relied on hunting for food. Occasionally, some animals would fly or swim over from the forest on the other side of the flaming river. Other than hunting, they also harvested. They had seeds, but they couldn't plant them this year. Xiao Xian saw that the Rain tribesmen had already started using some newly made pottery. Some houses even had pottery spinning wheels and other tools in front of them. They had already picked up their skills and started a new way to make a living. According to the Rain tribesmen, there were other tribes nearby. Some of them moved away because they felt that this place was too dangerous. The forest on the other side of the river was also a dangerous place. They were afraid of living so close to it, so they left. Of course, most of the survivors chose to stay. They didn't want to take the risk of moving. Generally speaking, there were many tribes along the river. After all, this was a large water source. Even if they didn't live by the river, they weren't far from it. Looks like there are more tribes here than I thought, said Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian actually had another idea. Not long ago, when they were talking about the trading trip before winter, someone mentioned that the trading location was too far away. Indeed, if they wanted to trade for good stuff, they had to travel further. For example, the trading area near the big tribes in the central region with more amazing skills or other large trading areas were indeed very far from here. If only they were closer, it would save them a lot of time and effort. It was definitely impossible to move the trading area here, but what if they built a new trading area here? The flaming river was no longer a dangerous river. It would nourish many tribes around the river bank. What would happen if they built a new trading point nearby? Chapter 594. The purpose of this voyage was not just for trading. Xiao Xian also thought that if his navigation skills were good enough, he could go upstream or downstream to take a look. Back then, the natural conditions were too restrictive, so he was not familiar with many places upstream or downstream. As for the new trading point, indeed, there was no large trading area nearby. This was considered a remote area of the mainland, especially when the flaming river was still a dangerous river. The other tribes on the mainland didn't want to come here. As time passed, there were fewer and fewer new faces here. Only small tribes like the Drumming tribe and the Poo tribe interacted with each other. If they wanted to trade, they would go to each other's tribe instead of going to a place where they could trade freely. Hence, there were fewer choices. The Drumming tribe had been cheated by the Poo tribe many times. They knew they were cheated, but they didn't have much choice. There weren't many people in their tribe. Every year, there were many people who wanted their water moon stones. The warriors didn't dare to go too far in case something happened. The Poo tribe, which was close by, was their only choice. Perhaps the Luo tribe used to be a trading partner, but now the Luo tribe was gone. From Yanjiao's point of view, not having a good trading partner was indeed a problem. Back when they were on the other side of the sea, the expedition team would bring the hides they had hoarded to the cities controlled by the slave masters to trade. There were many people there, and every city was a very good place to trade. With more choices, the hides could be sold at a higher price and exchanged for more satisfactory things. But now, in this remote area, after some thought, Xiao Xian went to the shamaness and chief for a discussion. It would have been better if Xiao Xian didn't mention it. Once he did, the shamaness and the two chiefs couldn't sit still anymore. When they were in the fearsome beast forest, they knew that many large tribes had trading points near them. They didn't think of setting one up back then. Plus, the Lu tribe often came here, so they didn't think much of it. Now that Yanjiao had moved here, the environment was different. If they wanted to trade for better things, they had to go on a long journey. The distance from here to the nearest trading point was much longer than the distance from the fearsome beast forest to the nearest trading point. If they didn't do anything, they would have to go on a long journey every time they wanted to trade. Xian's idea is not bad. The shaman lowered his eyes and pondered. But, how do we set up the trading area? Where should we build it? Ao asked. It's definitely not on our side, Xiao Xian said after some thought. I'll go over to the other side of the flaming river and take a look. If there was a suitable place, he could try to develop it. It would definitely not develop to the level of the central region or the well-known large-scale trading zones on the grassland. But one step at a time, it would eventually succeed. Without further delay, Xiao Xian didn't go out with the expedition team this time, so he had time to observe the surrounding environment and terrain. Speaking of which, when the tribe migrated here, he only focused on this area and did not go to other places. He wanted to take this opportunity to see what kind of changes had happened to the area along the river during the disaster. Xiao Xian called over Cha-Cha, who flew everywhere every day. Riding on the eagle, Xiao Xian ordered it to fly to the other side of the flaming river. There were many forests in this area. 1,000 years ago, before the earth split open and the river formed, the two sides of the river were connected. The Yanjiao side was filled with forests, so the other side of the river must be the same. This place was equivalent to another fearsome beast mountain forest, but it was too far from the center of the continent, and it was dangerous. Many of the tribes that lived here were small and medium-sized tribes. They were unable to fight for a place to settle down in more fertile areas, and could only survive in this remote area. Actually, the soil here wasn't bad, but because it was close to the river was more dangerous. Before the river was formed, the forests were connected and the danger was greater. In their ancestors' notes, there were comments about this place. Some people said that this was a place where beasts lived and it wasn't suitable for humans. The small and medium-sized tribes didn't have strong fighting abilities, so they could only live here with their limbs tucked away. 1,000 years ago, the earth had split open, and the dangerous mountains and forests had been carved out. However, the people on this continent still didn't change their view of this place. They never thought that this place was suitable for living, so even after 1,000 years, there were still not many tribes living here. Xiao Xian looked down at the mountains below. The mountains here weren't tall, and the forests weren't dense. Perhaps because there were people living here, there weren't any thick ancient trees. The disaster had swallowed much of the river here. It was slightly different from what Xiao Xian remembered. After looking at many places, Xiao Xian wasn't satisfied, so he ordered Cha-Cha to fly along one of the rivers. This river wasn't far from the drumming tribe. In the past, this river flowed from the central region of the mainland to the river. It was still the same now. Yanjiao's ships would enter this river from the flaming river and then sail inland. Looking carefully at the ground below, Xiao Xian suddenly said, "Let's go down and take a look." Cha-Cha responded and flew down. When Cha-Cha slowed down and approached the ground, Xiao Xian jumped down from the eagle's back and landed in a small forest. The reason why Xiao Xian chose this place was because the terrain and environment here were very similar to a place he had seen before. That year, when Xiao Xian brought Cha-Cha across the river to this place, they followed the Pu tribe's expedition team to the central region of the mainland. Along the way, they rested at a place where wanderers, slave masters and slaves lived. That was where Xiao Xian saw Shi Shu. At that time, Yan Shua's family was still wanderers. That place was where the rivers intersected. Often, expedition teams who lived in remote areas would pass by on wooden rafts. And now, the place Xiao Xian was standing on was very similar to that place. This place shouldn't be the territory of any tribe. Xiao Xian let Cha-Cha fly him around in the air again to confirm that this place didn't belong to any tribe. Although there were traces of human activity here, there weren't many traces left after a long time. Very few people came here. Xiao Xian made a mark on the map, marking it as 1, and then went to other places to look for a suitable location. For 3 days, Xiao Xian searched outside. The place couldn't be too far from Yanjiao. Therefore, in 3 days, he had already searched all the suitable places. There were 4 places that he was satisfied with, but in the end, he still chose the place marked with 1. Once he decided, the Yanjiao people began to move. Therefore, some of the people from other tribes who went out to look for food saw the Yanjiao people carrying large stone tablets to put up the tablets. Only this time, it wasn't a name, but a marking of the land. The engraved stone tablet marked out the land and told the people who came and went, from today onwards, this land belongs to Yanjiao. What, you don't agree? This place doesn't belong to any tribe. It's completely ownerless land. Why can't I take it? Who said that the territories must be connected? We like to mark 2 pieces of land that aren't connected. Do you have any objections? Don't worry, just say it. Come, let's have a good talk. Chapter 595. The place Xiao Xian had his eyes on was also at the intersection of 2 rivers. This would be a good place for boats to travel. When Xiao Xian was drawing the layout, he even drew out the location of the dock on his animal skin scroll. Those who didn't go on missions, didn't have shifts, and didn't go hunting were sent to Xiao Xian's plot of land to begin construction. In the minds of the tribesmen, the first task of enclosing a piece of land was to enclose the land that belonged to them and let outsiders know that this land belonged to them. That was why over the past few days, they saw Yanjiao warriors using thick and tough rattan ropes to tie a pile of rocks of different sizes onto their shoulders or backs. They were transporting the rocks to the newly encircled land. The rocks were all dug from the nearby mountains. The surrounding mountains weren't big, but they were still quite common. They still didn't belong to any tribe, but from time to time, they could see a few vigilant outsiders hiding in the bushes, watching the Yanjiao tribesmen coming and going. These outsiders didn't dare to attack the Yanjiao tribesmen. Anyone who saw someone who could carry so many rocks and still joke around would be wary. Plus, they saw more than 1 or 2 Yanjiao tribesmen every time, so they had to be extra careful. There were bound to be curious people. These tribesmen who lived in unknown corners might not be conspicuous, but they definitely had their own abilities and ways of living. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to survive. Xiao Xian wouldn't ignore or underestimate these tribesmen. After finding out that some tribesmen were secretly watching them, Xiao Xian ordered his men to prepare some wooden signs. Then, he used a plant pigment to write on the wooden signs. The words written on the wooden signs told the tribesmen who came out to hunt 3 things. First, Yanjiao wanted this land. Second, Yanjiao planned to build a trading point here. It would be called the Flaming River Trading Point. The trading point would open once before winter officially arrived. Any tribesman who wanted to trade could come and take a look. Third, Yanjiao had a large amount of high-quality animal hides, from wild beasts and fearsome beasts. After thinking for a while, Xiao Xian added, "It's a fair trade, and I don't cheat anyone." After he finished writing, Xiao Xian handed the wooden plaque to the soldier carrying the stones. "Find a place to insert it on the road." The soldiers carrying the stones looked at him and understood what Xiao Xian meant. Without saying anything, they picked up the wooden planks and quickly left. They still had to carry the stones. The Yanjiao people were strong and efficient in transporting stones. Xiao Xian had only circled the area for 2 days, but half of the outer wall was already built. Xiao Xian had said that the area could be opened before winter. He wasn't talking nonsense, he had calculated the time. Xiao Xian also sent people to the Drumming tribe, Rain tribe, Pu tribe and other tribes along the Flaming River. He told them about the Flaming River trading point. The Rain tribe had already started preparing for the trade. They had been saving up and were planning to trade with Yanjiao before winter. Now that they knew about the Flaming River trading point, they were even more excited. What the Yanjiao people liked, the Rain tribe might not like. If they only traded with the Yanjiao people, they might not be able to get what they needed. Now that the Flaming River trading point had appeared, they might have more choices. Naturally, they were all working hard. Some of the free craftsmen in the tribe also came over to help after they finished building the boats. Old Ku also came over. He couldn't move around, but he was good at crafting stone and wood. He could help with the construction of the houses. If Caesar was here, he would carry Old Ku and cross the Flaming River with the other warriors. They would return after they were done. If Caesar went hunting, Cha-Cha would bring Old Ku over. They didn't even need to take the boat. The Yanjiao craftsmen didn't rest after they finished building the boats. They took the initiative to ask for help. They loved to create. Plus, the Flaming River trading point was a good thing for Yanjiao, so they were happy to be busy. The expedition team had already left. Before they left, Xiao Xian had already confirmed the location of the Flaming River trading point. That was why before the team left, he told the expedition team that if they went to the inland trading point, they should tell the people there that the best beast hide was in the Flaming River trading point. Was that wrong? No, it was definitely right. The Yanjiao people dared to say this out loud. We have the best beast hide. It was the truth. At the same time, Xiao Xian also told the expedition team to tell the expedition team that beast hides were more expensive in the winter. If they wanted to use the same thing to exchange for more beast hides, they should come to the Flaming River trading point during the other seasons. In the past 2 winters, the weather was abnormal, so there was no need for beast hides. However, now that the disaster was over, the weather would return to normal. Perhaps there would be other changes, but it definitely wouldn't repeat the past 2 years. In many places on the mainland, it would definitely snow in winter. It might even be colder. Otherwise, migrating birds wouldn't just fly here and not somewhere else. This year, the demand for beast hides would definitely skyrocket. The disaster in the past had caused many tribes to suffer heavy losses. They might not be able to get enough beast hides to keep warm. Even if they did, how could beast hides compare to fearsome beast hides? Some people used beast fur, feathers, straw and other things as fillers. They used linen to make simple jackets, but when it came to keeping warm, it definitely wasn't as convenient and sturdy as beast hides, especially fearsome beast hides. Many people liked them very much. The beast hides brought by the expedition team would definitely be sold out, but as for whether the people there would come to the Flaming River trading point to exchange for beast hides, that wasn't certain. Xiao Xian didn't plan to let everyone know about the Flaming River trading point immediately. This wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. It would take a long time. Perhaps bringing out the new bronze wares would attract more attention, but at this stage, it wasn't wise to bring them out. Yanjiao's own supply couldn't meet the demand, so how could they bring them out to trade? However, the appearance of this trading point would definitely attract more tribesmen from both upstream and downstream of the Flaming River. That way, Xiao Xian wouldn't have to travel by boat to get more information about the Flaming River. Only with people could there be communication, and only with communication could information flow. Yanjiao was just providing a place for people to communicate. Of course, there would definitely be people with bad intentions who would come and try to rob or steal. Towards these people, Yanjiao only had one attitude: kill. Even a friendly tribe wouldn't show mercy to people who tried to steal or rob them. Xiao Xian compared the drawings on the beast hide scroll and explained in detail to the craftsmen. After making sure that they understood, he went to the next location. The team transporting the stones had already left the trading point with the wooden boards that Xiao Xian had written for them. They were heading towards the mountain. They walked through the forest. After 2 days of transporting stones, they had already carved out a small path. The trees on the path had all been cut down, and the obstacles on the path had been removed. The grass on the ground had already been trampled into mud. Let's stick it here. Lang Jie stuck the wooden board into the ground beside the path. He quickly scanned the forest not far away and left with the others. Not long after they left, a few figures approached carefully. They had messy hair and dirty faces, and only had some messily woven vines draped over them. They took 2 steps forward and stopped to listen. After confirming that there was no one else around, they continued to approach. When they reached the wooden board, the leader frowned as he looked at the words on the board. His expression was bitter, as if it was difficult for him to decipher the words. Although there was indeed a common language on this continent, not every tribe had a high literacy rate. The leader finally managed to decipher the words on the board, and then he explained it to the people behind him. The few of them gathered in a circle and discussed. Another person stood on the outside and carefully observed their surroundings. When the discussion was over, the leader walked to the wooden plank, clenched his teeth, and pulled it up with all his might. After pulling it out, the few of them ran away as if there was a fearsome beast chasing after them. When Lang Jie came back with the stone, he saw that there was only a hole where he had stuck the wooden board. Chapter 596. The people carrying the wooden signs quickly shuttled through the forest. They were like agile monkeys in the forest. When they moved, they could only hear the rustling of leaves or the swaying of branches. Other than that, there was no other sound. Their feet were tied with some coarse vines, and their toes were exposed. Compared to other tribes, their toes were twice as long, and their soles were larger. When they shuttled through the forest, they used their feet in addition to their hands. Their toes were flexible and powerful, just like another pair of hands. Their fingers hooked onto a branch, and their bodies swung up. In the next step, their other foot had already hooked onto the branch in front of them, and they moved forward again. They lived in a tribe nearby. This group of people came out to hunt. If they saw wild animals, they would kill them. If they found edible fruit or other food, they would bring it back. When the Flaming Horn tribe started building the trading point on the first day, they had already noticed the movement. However, they knew that their tribe's fighting power was not strong enough. In this place, they couldn't even defeat the Drumming tribe and the Pooh tribe. At best, they could only compare with the already destroyed Luo tribe. They only knew about the Yanjiao people because their chief told them. When the Yanjiao people appeared and left by boat, many of their tribe's warriors saw them. When tribesmen recognized other tribes, they basically looked at their totems. That was why when they saw the stone tablet with the Flaming Horn's totem on it, they knew who was here. Because they didn't dare to go closer, they couldn't figure out what the Yanjiao people wanted to do. After 2 days of observation, they went to take a look again today. They saw a Yanjiao person put a wooden board there, and there were words written on it. Curious, they went over to take a look. Not many of them were literate, and none of them could read all the words. Because they didn't need to know many words, they didn't care. The leader of the group was the most literate. He roughly recognized the words on the board, and was shocked by the news. In their minds, tribes should revolve around the fire seed. Regardless of whether it was a large tribe or a small one, they all revolved around the fire seed. The only difference was the size of their territory. However, the Yanjiao people had actually circled out another piece of land outside of their dwelling. Were they planning something big? What was the purpose of the Flaming River trading point? If they couldn't figure it out, they immediately went back to ask the chief and the shaman. However, they didn't know how to write so many words, and they didn't have an extraordinary memory, so they just pulled out the wooden planks and brought them back. They didn't realize that they would anger the Yanjiao people if they took away the wooden planks. No one had ever done that before. Carrying the planks, they climbed over several hills and then went down a narrow path between 2 hills that seemed to be joined together. From afar, they couldn't see that there was a mountain path. After walking through the mountain path and entering the interior, the first thing that came into view was a small basin surrounded by mountains. There were many trees in the basin, and many of the trees were tied together with vines or branches to form small huts. Above the huts, there were also branches and thick leaves, or withered leaves that were tied together with twigs and grass ropes, which could shelter them from the wind and rain. Most of the things outside were made of wood and stone. The stone and bone tools were crude and rough, and most of them were hunting tools. There were even some strange shapes. Even if outsiders saw them, they wouldn't know what they were for. Unlike the former, the wooden tools were much more exquisite. Most of their living tools were made of wood. Bamboo baskets, rattan baskets, rattan armor, rattan shields, and so on were woven very well. The residents who were busy inside were confused when they saw the people rushing back to the tribe. Didn't these people go out to look for food? Why did they bring back a wooden plate? Were they planning to chop it up and use it as firewood? The people carrying the wooden planks ignored the curious gazes and rushed straight to the chief. They placed the wooden planks in front of the chief, who was weaving rattan baskets in front of his house. Clap! The sound of the wooden planks hitting the ground startled the person weaving the rattan baskets. He accidentally used too much force and broke the rattan baskets. The leader raised his eyebrows, which was a sign that he was about to get angry. The warrior who carried the wooden planks back scratched his ears and cheeks anxiously. He didn't know how to explain, so he just kept pointing at the wooden planks on the ground. The chief was so angry that smoke almost came out of his head. When he looked down at the wooden planks on the ground, his eyes flashed. He couldn't care less about getting angry. He kicked the rattan baskets aside and carefully placed the wooden planks in front of him to read the words on it. As a chief, he was definitely not illiterate like the others. He could easily recognize all the words on the wooden planks and deduced a lot of information from the words on it. Seeing that there were still people standing beside him, the chief waved his hand and signaled for them to leave. He sat there alone and looked at the wooden planks in deep thought. In the end, he seemed to have made a decision and brought the wooden planks to the shamaness to discuss it. At the same time, at the Pooh tribe's place, they were also discussing the Flaming River trading point. When they heard that the Yanjiao people were going to build a trading point here, the Pooh tribesmen's first reaction was, "Damn, someone's trying to steal our business." At that time, some people were clamoring to go fight with the Yanjiao people and teach them a lesson. However, when they understood the strength of the Yanjiao people, they gave up. They could see the situation clearly. If it was just a small tribe that they could control, they would definitely go and argue with them. However, when faced with a big tribe that was stronger than them, many of the Pooh tribesmen were terrified. However, as famous merchants in this area, after the Pooh tribesmen saw the situation clearly, they began to think about how to get more benefits from this. In the past disaster, the Pooh tribe's losses were relatively small. This was something they were still rejoicing about. After the disaster ended, the Pooh tribe's chief proudly praised the foresight of the Pooh tribe's ancestors. They had chosen a good land, unlike the Luo tribe and other tribes that had been destroyed in the past disaster, disappearing from the world. However, after feeling glad and proud, they began to worry again. In the past disaster, a few tribes that were in contact with them were wiped out. Even if they were not wiped out and survived the disaster, their strength was severely damaged and they no longer participated in many missions. For example, when the Pooh tribe went on a few expeditions every year, those tribes refused to participate in them. Those tribes already had few people. If more people went out, who would protect them? That was why the Pooh tribe did not go on any expeditions. They had many things that they wanted to trade outside, but they did not have enough manpower, so they could only stay in their tribe and think of a way. Now that Yanjiao had built the Flaming River trading point, it was a good opportunity for them. Therefore, after complaining, the Pooh tribe began to prepare to trade at the Flaming River trading point before winter. Chapter 597. Many tribes didn't pay much attention to the Yanjiao naming of the Flaming River. After the excitement died down, they forgot about it. Wasn't it just a river? So what if it had a name? But now, this river was connected to the trading point. Perhaps many people didn't know which river the Flaming River referred to, but the Flaming River trading point touched their nerves. That was a trading point. A place where they could trade goods. Xiao Xian had already spread the news and placed many wooden signs around the area. He believed that news of the Flaming River trading point would reach the ears of many other tribes. How is it? It's almost done, right? Duo Kong brought a group of people over. They were here to deliver food and also to replace the people who had been working here for the whole day. It's almost done. If it's not perfect, it's barely usable. Xiao Xian rolled up the animal skin scroll in his hand and looked at the surrounding buildings. The outer wall was made of stones. It was thick enough and between 7 to 10 meters high. There were 3 entrances and exits. 2 were near the dock, and 1 was facing the direction of the forest. There was already a walkway there. After Duo Kong assigned tasks to his subordinates, he ran over to Xiao Xian and said, "Oh right, this trading point will be opened before winter. How do you plan to treat the people who come over? For example, the Rain tribe and the Pu tribe." "I've already arranged for their places." Xiao Xian passed the animal skin scroll in his hand to Duo Kong and pointed to 2 areas marked on it. "Here, that area is towards the Pu tribe. They will definitely come over from the water. The Rain tribe will be over here." Xiao Xian pointed out the areas to Duo Kong and explained the reason for this arrangement. Wait. Duo Kong didn't have any objections to this arrangement, but he thought of a problem. "You're not going to collect anything from them?" At first, Duo Kong thought that Xiao Xian would treat them like how the slave masters treated their cities. On the other side of the sea, tribesmen who wanted to enter the city had to pay an entrance fee. After entering the city, they would choose a place to trade and collect goods based on the quality of the goods. However, Duo Kong and the others used to trade in the free trade zone in the city. They didn't have a fixed location and would always look for empty spaces, unlike others who had a fixed location to set up their stalls. However, Duo Kong wasn't willing to let others set up a stall in his own territory. Xiao Xian explained, "This is only the first step. In the beginning, no one knows what this place is like. We have to let them understand the benefits of this place first. Free access is only temporary. Once everyone is familiar with this place and knows the benefits of this place, we will collect some things appropriately." "I see." Duo Kong immediately understood and nodded. "That's true." If the tribesmen couldn't see the benefits, they wouldn't make decisions at will. Therefore, if they wanted to attract those people, they had to offer some benefits first. If they started to collect tolls before they had even developed, many tribes would probably shrink their necks back when they heard about it. "I wonder how many tribes will come when the time comes." Duo Kong muttered as he left. Xiao Xian didn't know either. He knew that only the Rain tribe, the Drumming tribe, and the Pu tribe would be coming. These few days, some people came to inquire, but Xiao Xian didn't know what those people had decided. He could only wait until the day the trading zone opened up. Xiao Xian looked at the animal skin scroll in his hand again. There were houses drawn on it. Some were connected into large areas, some even had small courtyards and warehouses. Some were smaller, but most of the houses were made of wood. It wasn't difficult to build them, which was why they could be built so quickly. This was a place where tribes traded with each other. Basically, there wouldn't be any transactions between a tribe and a single person or a few people. These activities were all organized by the tribes. Therefore, in this trading zone, there weren't any small houses for a single person or a few people. If there were many people, Xiao Xian would give them a bigger place. If there were fewer people, Xiao Xian would give them a smaller place. The most central area belonged to the Yanjiao people. Moreover, it was different from the other wooden houses. The central area was a stone house with more than 2 floors. It was getting closer and closer to the opening of the trading zone. The Yanjiao headquarters had already transported some goods over. In addition to the goods brought by the expedition team, the tribesmen still had a lot of things in their hands. Many of them were relatively cheap. There were also some animal skins, which they had accumulated over the past few days. Pottery, horns, and bones weren't rare. The main things they had were animal skins and meat. Yanjiao didn't lack food now. They could use the extra food to exchange for other things. In fact, now that the trading zone was open, the Yanjiao people would benefit greatly. They would have more choices. Many of the nearby tribes had suffered varying degrees of damage in the past disaster. They didn't recover as quickly as Yanjiao. Perhaps they would take out the things they had saved to exchange for other things they urgently needed. Soon, the Rain tribe also brought their goods over. They couldn't repay their debts for the time being, but they could use some of their labor to exchange for food for the winter. They hadn't been here for long, so they didn't have much in stock. This was just a trial. Many people from the drumming tribe also came, but they mainly came to watch the fun. They didn't have any goods, so they could only temporarily maintain the most basic livelihood. Even if they were envious, they could only watch. However, during this period of time when they were rebuilding their tribe, they dug up some scattered water moonstones. Some of them were even taken out from the water by the crocodiles. They planned to exchange them for some food. The Pooh tribe first sent people over to investigate. They felt that it should be safe for the time being, so they went back to report. Not long after, the Pooh tribe's team also came over. Because there weren't many people coming over, Xiao Xian arranged for them to be closer to the center instead of scattered everywhere. Among the people from the Pooh tribe, there were some people Xiao Xian knew. The leader was still someone Xiao Xian was familiar with. It was the Pooh tribe's expedition team's leader, Fan Ning. There were also people like Yu, whose eyelids were painted in bright colors. A whistle interrupted Xiao Xian and Yu's reminiscing. Xiao Xian let people lead the Pooh tribe's team to the arranged place, while Xiao Xian looked towards the entrance. After a while, outside the wall, a head appeared at the entrance of the trading point. That person's head was tied with a small braid in the shape of a chicken's claw. On both sides of the braid, there were also beast horns. The habit of wearing beast horns was not only practiced by the Yanjiao tribe, but also by other tribes. The other party seemed very cautious. Under the urging of the guards at the entrance, they slowly appeared. It was a group of people wearing rattan armor. Their hairstyles were similar. They held some wooden or stone weapons in their hands and carried rattan baskets on their backs. What caught Xiao Xian's attention was their feet, which were much bigger than the others, and the long toes on their feet. With a strange expression, Lang Jie ran in front of Xiao Xian and said in a low voice, "These people were the ones who observed the trading point a while ago." Xiao Xian also had an impression of a few of them. However, he remembered that the figures he saw hiding in the forest were people with unkempt hair. Now it seemed that these people had specially dressed up before coming. Chapter 598. The guards at the entrance felt their teeth ache when they saw the procession dilly-dallying. In fact, before these people had even turned the mountain, the guards outside the trading point had already discovered them. It was the eagle's cry in the sky that told them. They were still thinking, the Rain tribe, the Drumming tribe, and the Pooh tribe had all come over, so which tribe was it now? Cha-Cha, who was in charge of keeping watch in the sky, told the guards that there weren't many people coming. Hence, the guards thought they were probably from one of the smaller tribes in the Flaming River region. They were looking forward to it. They waited for almost half an hour but they still didn't see anyone. After an hour, the people from the Pooh tribe had already gone in but those people still didn't show up. As one of the guards at the Yanjiao trading point, Kuan Tu thought to himself, could it be that this tribe's totem is a tortoise? When they finally saw those people, the guards finally understood why they were so slow. They were too cautious. It was as if they could scare them away with just a flick. They couldn't wait to take a step forward and stop to look around after 3 steps. There were almost 80 people. Other than the leader, everyone else was dressed the same way. When those people finally got close, Kuan Tu blew his wooden whistle to tell Xiao Xian that more tribes were coming. Those people stood at the entrance but didn't go in. They were still very wary of the armed Yanjiao guards at the entrance. Go in, they won't eat you. Don't worry, it's safe to trade in the Flaming River trading point. We Yanjiao are here, Kuan-tu said. The leader sized up Kuan-tu as if he was thinking about how trustworthy Kuan-tu's words were. After a while, he nodded and lifted his neck. Just when Kuan-tu thought he would walk into the trading point with his head held high, the man acted like a thief and stuck his head out to look inside the trading point. He dawdled for a while before taking small steps in. His gaze quickly scanned the trading point and his face was filled with nervousness. It was as if he would run away at the slightest sign of trouble. Xiao Xian looked at this strange tribesman and asked loudly, "May I ask which tribe you are from?" Xiao Xian tried his best to speak softly and in a more friendly tone, but the person who came in still shrank back as if he was frightened. The leader probably realized that he was behaving inappropriately and felt embarrassed. He forced himself to calm down and cleared his throat. Ahem. We are from the drumming tribe. I am the chief, Abuli. The drumming tribe? Abuli? Or the leader? Was there ever such a cowardly leader? No matter what they thought, Xiao Xian saw that although they were overly cautious and curious, they didn't seem to have any intention of snatching the treasures. He walked over with a smile and said, "Xiao Xian, elder of the Yanjiao tribe." Elder? Those who had just straightened their backs felt lacking in confidence again. Ahem, oh. Abuli did not know what to say. His expression was a little awkward, and the smile he forced out was very stiff. He could not force out a word for a long time. These people probably did not interact much with other tribes. Perhaps, this was their first time participating in such a transaction. Xiao Xian thought to himself. May I know what the drumming tribe brought this time, and what do they want to exchange? Xiao Xian took the initiative to ask. Lang Jie, who was following behind Xiao Xian, glanced at the people from the drumming tribe a few times, especially the few people in the group. He had seen them a few times when they were moving the stones. Even if they changed their heads and wore rattan armor, he could still recognize them. It was just like when he was hunting a group of beasts, he could tell which one was the prey he had set his eyes on. However, what could these people have in their hands? Looking at the people from the drumming tribe, they looked a little like the Yanjiao people who were cut off from the rest of the world a long time ago. But back then, even if the Yanjiao people had nothing, at least they had beast hides. These people lived here, so they definitely did not have any better beast hides. So what could they bring out to exchange? Lang Jie wasn't looking down on the people of the drumming tribe, he was just curious about what they had in their hands. The rattan baskets they were carrying were woven so tightly that he couldn't even see a gap. The top of the baskets was also tightly covered. Lang Jie could only hear the slight sound of hard objects colliding and rubbing against each other in the rattan baskets when the man accidentally stumbled just now. Lang Jie couldn't hear anything else because the man was walking too fast. Lang Jie didn't know how his strange big feet moved. Lang Jie thought that he would fall down, but in the next moment, he stood up steadily and continued walking. Sure enough, even if they were a small tribe, they could not be underestimated. As for Xiao Xian's question, Abuli did not directly answer. His eyes were still quickly scanning the surroundings, as if he was trying to identify the dangers around them. We want to exchange for some food. Oh, and some beast hides. I want something thicker and sturdier. Abuli said this quickly and hurriedly, unlike his usual slow movements. After he finished speaking, he continued to scan the surroundings. We have both food and beast hides in Yanjiao. However, do you want to trade directly with us in Yanjiao, or do you want to go elsewhere? There are people from the Rain tribe, the Drumming tribe, and the Pu tribe here. Not the Pu tribe. Abuli quickly rejected. He did not know where the Rain tribe came from, but he knew the Drumming tribe and the Pu tribe. The Drumming tribe looked too fierce, so they did not dare to talk to them. As for the Pu tribe, they had bad morals and were too treacherous. They did not like them. We'll trade with you in Yanjiao. Your wooden board says it's a fair trade. It's not a lie. Abuli opened his eyes wide. It was rare that he did not look around. He only looked at Xiao Xian, wanting to get a definite answer from Xiao Xian. Yes, that's right. Xiao Xian nodded. After getting a definite answer, Abuli let out a long sigh of relief. His cautiousness and vigilance eased, but it did not disappear. Xiao Xian brought them to the center of the trading point. There were many empty houses along the way. There were not many people in the trading point, so there were many empty houses. However, when the drumming tribesmen looked around, their eyes were filled with envy. They were even more envious of the beast hides that the Yanjiao people wore. As for the tools in the Yanjiao people's hands, they were only curious. They did not pay much attention to them because they did not know what they were. Besides, what they wanted the most right now was food and beast hides to keep them warm. This year's winter would be slightly colder, so they had to be prepared. Although the trading point was still very simple and there were not many people, to the drumming tribesmen, a new door had already opened. The young warriors of the drumming tribe kept looking at the beast hides and meat on display. When they saw the cubs, they couldn't help but want to take a good look and touch them. Lang Jie looked at the warriors of the drumming tribe who kept swallowing their saliva. What made him satisfied was that although these people really wanted to take those things, they didn't have any intention of snatching them. Instead, they just followed Abuli, who was in the lead. The drumming tribesmen wanted beast hides and meat, so Xiao Xian mainly brought them to the area where the hides and meat were displayed. The more he looked, the more nervous Abuli became. Yanjiao's beast hides were far better than he had imagined. He did not know how much they could exchange for. Would they be able to reach his expectations? After showing them around, Xiao Xian brought them to a spacious warehouse. There, 80 drumming tribesmen could enter. You've already seen the beast hides and meat. They should be enough to satisfy you. Now, let's see if you can bring out something that will move our Yanjiao. Chapter 599. Abuli's face was tense as he replied with a grunt. Then, he removed the rattan basket from his back. Xiao Xian could tell that Abuli wasn't trying to pull a long face. He was probably too nervous, and his movements were stiff as he removed the rattan basket. Behind Abuli, there were more than 10 Ji tribe warriors carrying heavy rattan baskets. They also removed the rattan baskets from their backs, but they didn't seem to have any intention of opening the rattan baskets. They just hugged the rattan baskets with nervous expressions. In comparison, Abuli was the calmest of them all. The surrounding Yanjiao warriors also looked at Abuli's rattan basket. They wanted to see what this strange Ji tribe had brought. If it wasn't something that Yanjiao needed, would they still trade with these people? The rattan baskets were tied too tightly. When the lid was opened, the rattan basket let out a creaking sound. It was very clear in the quiet warehouse. When Abuli opened the lid, Xiao Xian caught a glimpse of light. The reflection of the light made his heart skip a beat. These are the things we brought. Abuli placed the rattan basket on the table in front of him and pushed it towards Xiao Xian. The muscles on his arms seemed to be frozen. His movements were not smooth at all. His two eyes stared straight at Xiao Xian. He wanted to know what he wanted to know from Xiao Xian. Did the Yanjiao people want the things they brought? If the Yanjiao people didn't want them, should they just carry them back? Or should they do something else? Sensing Abuli and the dozens of pairs of eyes behind him, Xiao Xian calmly moved the rattan basket over and looked inside. Sure enough. Inside Abuli's rattan basket, there were some white transparent hard objects. Every one of them had distinct edges and grew into a cluster. There were only a few scattered crystal pillars that looked like they had been broken by an external force. Xiao Xian took out the broken piece. It was a white, transparent crystal. The bottom part of the crystal was white, while the other part was colorless and transparent. Crystal. Xiao Xian looked at the crystal in his hand, which was almost as thick as his forearm. Although he had seen crystals in some trading places before, they were not necessary for most tribesmen. They were not like the jade produced by the Mang tribe, which had an effect on the totemic power in the body. They were also not like the water-moon stones of the drumming tribe, which could illuminate the body. They were not as valuable as the shells that could be used as currency for medicinal purposes. Therefore, even if people bought these crystals back, they would only make them into ornaments. And those who could buy these crystals were people who didn't have to worry about food and clothing. Many tribes who were short of daily necessities wouldn't trade for these crystals at all. But now, the crystals that the drumming tribe took out were not only big, but they were also in clusters. The crystal in his hand was as thick as a forearm and as long as a palm, but it was only a small one among the clusters. Seeing that Xiao Xian was only a little surprised at the beginning, the drumming tribesman became even more nervous. Xiao Xian handed the crystal in his hand to Lang Jie next to him. For the Yanjiao people, this kind of thing could only be used as an ornament. There was no need to trade. Only the people from the other side of the sea would look at Xiao Xian from time to time, as if they wanted to say something, but because of the rules, they didn't say anything. Lang Jie weighed the crystal in his hand, then took out a short stone dagger and slashed at the crystal abruptly. Zeng! Stone powder splashed out from the point of impact. The drumming tribesmen were so scared by Lang Ga's sudden movement that they all took a step back at the same time. Looking at the small gap in the crystal, then at the gap in the knife in his hand, Lang Jie said, "Medium to high-quality stone." After testing the stone, Lang Jie put the stone on the table expressionlessly. Aside from the stone's special appearance, there was nothing else that surprised him. What was the use of just looking good? Wouldn't a polished stone tool be more or less the same for hunting? It was fine to trade for something to play with, but Lang Jie wasn't willing to use this to trade for more things from the Yanjiao. Their tribe had plenty of stone tools. Now that many people were using metal tools, what was the use of these? And for the Yanjiao people, the best ornaments weren't beautiful stones, but fierce beasts' horns, sharp teeth, claws, and so on. Those were the best ornaments to show off one's strength. There was a thing called aesthetic differences in this world. Next to Lang Jie, a warrior from the other side of the sea held back for a long time. When Lang Jie finished speaking, he finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Just as he was about to speak up, Xiao Xian made a gesture and he immediately stopped talking. He stood quietly behind, trying to keep a straight face. He wasn't as anxious as before. "You brought all these?" Xiao Xian asked. Abuli nodded. "Yes, all these." The drumming warriors behind Abuli realized that these might not be valuable after seeing the Yanjiao people's calm reaction. They were very discouraged and didn't even try to hide their disappointment. Abuli was already mentally prepared. He had secretly gone out to trade with the Pu tribe before, but he didn't get much. This time, although he had high hopes for Yanjiao, he was also prepared for the worst. He even thought that he wouldn't be able to trade for anything and would bring these back untouched. The most stressful moment was over, and now Abuli was more at ease. He carried the rattan basket over and looked at the large cluster of crystals inside. These are called crystals. They have a special meaning in our tribe. They are bright and sturdy, and are loved by our drumming tribe. In the drumming tribe, these crystals would be made into jewelry and worn on the chest. They could also be made into weapons. This was a custom passed down from the ancestors of the drumming tribe. However, these weapons and jewelry made from crystals would rarely be placed outside. Even if they wore them, they would hide them under their clothes. Weapons were the same. Most of the time, they would carry wooden weapons on their hands, but they would hide the weapons made from crystals on their bodies. The drumming tribe believed that important things should be hidden and not seen by others. Even if they were trash in the eyes of others, as long as they valued it, they would hide it well. That was why Lang Jie had never seen any crystal jewelry or weapons on them when he saw them before. That was because they were all hidden in places that weren't easy to see. After Abuli calmed down, his tone gradually calmed down and his body relaxed. "This is all we have. I know that it can't be exchanged for much, but this is already the best that our tribe can offer." He could tell that the flaming horns did not lack stone tools. However, his reputation was no longer important. He had to face it calmly. What he wanted to know now was what they could exchange these stone tools for with the flaming horns. Would the flaming horns be willing to trade with them? Xiao Xian listened quietly and nodded. He pointed at the crystal on the table. We can trade. This crystal can be exchanged for a piece of beast meat. You should have seen the size of the beast meat when you were outside. Huh? Abuli was stunned. Not only Abuli, but even the warriors of the drumming tribe behind Abuli widened their eyes as if they were frozen in place. It was as if they had heard something unbelievable. One stone, for a piece of beast meat? Abuli swallowed his saliva. That's right. That big? Abuli raised his hand and gestured according to what he saw outside. It was about 2 palms long and 1 palm wide. Yes. Aha! Abuli jumped up from his chair. This was completely out of Abuli's expectations. He originally thought that a basket of crystals could only be exchanged for 2 or 3 pieces of beast meat. After all, the crystals he brought over were all bunched up together. They were too small and couldn't be used to make weapons. The drumming tribe warriors behind Abuli were no longer timid. They couldn't wait to run out. We can trade. We can really trade for meat. I want to eat the meat of that pointy-eared beast. I saw it hanging outside just now. That doesn't look good. I want to eat the ones with long horns. Those won't do. What's wrong with your eyes? Just pick the fat ones. The warrior hugging the rattan basket felt like he was hugging a basket of meat. He was laughing so hard that his eyes couldn't be seen. He jumped up and down as if he wanted to fly. Meat, a basket of meat. Abuli now felt that the Yanjiao people were really pleasing to the eye. They were much better than the people of the Pu tribe. Back then, he was cheated badly by the people of the Pu tribe. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. Right, speaking of which, we've never seen those beasts hanging outside, Abuli said. He actually wanted to find out the names of those beasts. Even if he didn't know how to hunt, he could still brag about it. He was the most knowledgeable chief in the tribe. Of course. The fearsome beasts all live in the forest near the flaming river. They couldn't come here in the past, so the chances of them coming here in the future are slim, Xiao Xian said. Plop. There was a series of collapsing sounds behind them. Lang Jie was confused. The ground was so flat after being beaten by them. How did these people fall down? Abuli, who hurriedly got up, didn't care about Lang Jie and the others' puzzled gazes. He moved closer to Xiao Xian and stuttered, fearsome beasts. The beast meat you're talking about, fearsome beast meat? Abuli's voice was trembling as he spoke. He only heard 2 words from Xiao Xian. Yes, Xiao Xian said. Oh. Abuli nodded expressionlessly. His face was red, and he suddenly jumped up. When he landed, he quickly stomped on the ground 3 times with his big feet, causing a cloud of dust to rise. It wasn't just Abuli. The other drumming tribesmen did the same thing. The Yanjiao people in the warehouse looked at the drumming tribesmen strangely. They didn't understand what they were doing. A declaration of war? It didn't seem like it. They didn't know that the drumming tribesmen would only express themselves like this when they were extremely excited. Chapter 600. Beast meat and beast hides were exchanged according to the amount of crystals the drumming tribe brought. Some of the beast meat was recently slaughtered because fearsome beast meat could be kept fresh for a longer time. Plus, the temperature wasn't too high, so the meat could be stored for a longer time. When it was placed in the trading point, there was no strange smell. Some of the meat was taken from the cave on top of the mountain where the Flaming Horn tribe stored their food. When they were chopped, the meat was hard and firm. Other than that, there was also cured meat and jerky, but those were more expensive because of the salt involved. The people of the drumming tribe mainly chose fresh meat. When they were choosing the meat, there were disputes in their group. Some wanted this kind of meat, some wanted that kind of meat. The reason was that they thought the meat they chose looked delicious. Most of the drumming tribe members had never eaten fearsome beast meat before. Even the chief, Abuli, had never eaten it before. This was also why they didn't think of fearsome beasts at first. Up until now, they had never seen a fearsome beast, let alone eaten one. So when they heard that they could exchange for fearsome beast meat, they were all shocked. After the shock, they became excited. They were so excited that they started arguing. Xiao Xian ordered his men to cut some of the meat for them to try. Although it was raw, to tribesmen, it wasn't like they didn't eat raw meat before. The drumming tribesmen tasted the raw meat without any pressure. Of course, only Abuli tasted it. The final decision was made by him, the chief. After Abuli looked through the items, he did not immediately trade them outside. Instead, he returned to the warehouse and told Xiao Xian about the items he had his eyes on. Then, he asked Xiao Xian to move the items into the warehouse and not leave them outside. Xiao Xian could understand. The drumming tribe members were very careful. There were people from the drumming tribe, Rain tribe and Pu tribe walking around outside. The drumming tribe members were worried that people would see what they got. After the beast meat and beast hides were exchanged, Abuli wrapped the beast meat with the leaves he gave them and placed it in the rattan basket. The beast hides were carefully rolled up and placed properly. After the rattan basket was covered, he tied it tightly with a straw rope to ensure that the rattan basket wouldn't open when they ran. "Can we trade here in the future?" Abuli asked expectantly after packing up. "Of course you can. The trading point isn't complete yet. This is just a trial run. It will last until winter when it snows. However, after winter ends, it will definitely be open again next year. You can come over whenever you want to trade." Xiao Xian paused for a moment before continuing, "As for the crystals you took out, it would be great if you had a bigger one. That way, we could exchange them for more things." Abuli didn't say anything. His long toes dug into the ground as if he was thinking about something. When the warriors of the Ji tribe behind him heard that the bigger the crystal, the more things they could exchange for, their eyes lit up. Without any delay, the people of the Ji tribe left as soon as they finished their trade. When they arrived, they practically walked in small steps. When the Yanjiao warriors saw them, they couldn't help but feel anxious for them and wanted to give them a push. However, after exchanging their goods, the people of the Ji tribe ran away as if there was wind beneath their feet. When they were in the trading point, they could only be considered to have walked a little faster. After all, within the trading point, Yanjiao had guaranteed that there would be no robberies. As soon as they left the trading point, a group of 80 people disappeared in the blink of an eye. Kun Tu and the others who were guarding the entrance of the trading point were dumbfounded. It's good that they ran fast. It's safer. Xiao Xian smiled as he watched the figures flash by in the distant forest. Because of the Yanjiao people inside the trading point, there wouldn't be any robberies. However, in the forest outside the trading point, there were some people with ulterior motives. They didn't have anything to trade in the trading point, so they wanted to rob the people who had exchanged their goods. However, the people of the Ji tribe weren't good at other things, but they were very good at escaping. The Yanjiao people couldn't help but sigh. Growing such big feet wasn't useless. Not only were those people fast, but they were also very agile in the woods. They were up and down, and their figures were erratic. Their existence was reasonable. No matter how small a tribe was, they still had their reasons for surviving. The people hiding in the forest who wanted to rob them could only watch as the people of the Ji tribe ran further and further away with their rattan baskets on their backs. After exchanging their goods, Abuli's group was so excited that they wanted to fly. They ran even faster. Hooking on branches with their toes, they even flipped a few times in the air as they flew past a bush of thorny plants. They weren't worried at all about falling and smashing into the thorny plants. In the past, the Ji tribe rarely interacted with other tribes. Most of the time, they hid in the forest and lived their own lives. They were very wary of other people. Only by being careful could they live a long life. When he saw the Yanjiao wooden board with the words written on it, Abuli hesitated. However, in the end, he decided to give it a try. He didn't expect to succeed. At that time, there were many people in the tribe who objected. They said that it was definitely the Yanjiao people's scheme. When they returned and saw the things in the rattan baskets, who would object again? The more Abuli thought about it, the more proud he became. He felt that he was wise and powerful. No wonder he was the chief of the tribe. When the group finally returned to the tribe, they saw that at the entrance of the tribe, there were many people waiting with their necks stretched out. They were anxiously waiting. The first Ji tribe warrior who noticed Abuli's group shouted. Soon, a large group of people rushed out from the gap. They had been waiting for Abuli's news. The chief had brought dozens of people out for a trade. This was a big event in the tribe. Everyone wanted to know the result. How was it? The shaman of the Ji tribe held a purple crystal staff and walked out quickly. Abuli raised his chin and put on airs. There's no rush. Let's talk inside. The shaman of the Ji tribe knew Abuli well. When he saw this, he knew that they had succeeded. However, when he entered the tribe, he realized that this trade was much more successful than they had expected. Some of the Ji tribe warriors who went out for the trade couldn't hold back their saliva anymore and started to talk about what they had seen and heard. After all, they were the first batch of people to go out for a trade. How could they not show off? Not to mention, this time, they had indeed opened a new door. Abuli didn't care about the beast meat. Instead, he took out the beast skin he had exchanged for and put it on. He turned around in front of everyone. How was it? Beast skin. Fearsome beast skin. You've never seen this before, right? Someone went over and touched the beast skin from top to bottom, then from bottom to top, but Abuli slapped him away with his stick. You can really exchange for it. Those who didn't go with him regretted it. They thought that this trip would be dangerous and wouldn't yield any results. Who would have thought? The onlookers hesitated for a while. Then, they thought of something and ran back to their homes. Every family in the Ji tribe had a lot of crystals. However, most of the crystals they had were about the same size as the ones Abuli brought out. Some were even smaller. After Abuli showed off, he waited for the crowd to disperse and came to a cave. Inside, he hid the treasures of the Ji tribe's chiefs for generations. Not only were there bigger crystal pillars and clusters, some of them were even glowing. Chapter 601. Not long after the drumming tribe left, a few other smaller tribes arrived. In the past, these smaller tribes didn't have much of a presence. Even if Xiao Xian sat on the eagle's back and searched everywhere, he might not be able to find all of them. Now, news of the trading point had probably spread. Some people couldn't help but come over out of curiosity, while others came to trade after hearing about it from others. For example, a small tribe that Xiao Xian had never heard of sent almost 50 people carrying baskets of fruit. They got the news from the drumming tribe. Just like the drumming tribe, they were also a small tribe with low combat power. That was why they had been living in seclusion all year round. They wished they could hide in the dark all day long. They felt safer that way. Now, probably because of the disaster, they had suffered some losses and were having a hard time. They also heard from the drumming tribe that they had obtained some benefits at the trading point, so they mustered up the courage to come over. Then, they obtained some food and animal skins from the Flaming River trading point. Although it wasn't much, it was enough to satisfy them. Firstly, they didn't have the crystals that the drumming tribe stored, and secondly, they didn't bring many fruits either. However, looking at the Yanjiao people, they seemed to like the things they brought. They wouldn't have to eat fruits this winter. There were animal skins too. Although most of them were just animal skins, it was enough to make them excited. This trip was worth it. Yes, the Yanjiao people were very satisfied with the fruits they brought. These fruits were high-quality food, comparable to fearsome beast meat. They didn't know where the tribesmen gathered these fruits. Even in the depths of the forest, the Yanjiao warriors had never seen these fruits before. They wouldn't tell anyone about this secret. The Yanjiao people didn't hesitate either. After all, it was just fruits. Without these, they could find other fruits in the forest. The reason why they were willing to trade was because the children in the Yanjiao tribe preferred these fruits. Compared to the ferocious beast meat, the energy brought by these fruits was milder. Even the children who had not awakened their totemic power could eat them, and some of them could be given to the children in the tribe as snacks. As the name of the Flaming River trading point spread, Xiao Xian's initial goal was achieved. Not only did the Yanjiao people get many things they were satisfied with, but the people who came here also left with smiles on their faces. After winter ended, when the Flaming River trading point opened again, they would come again. The drumming tribesmen didn't have any goods on hand. They came here to buy soy sauce, so they could only look and not trade. The people of the Rain tribe threw out the things in their hands and exchanged them for the things they needed to survive the winter. Other than the Yanjiao people, the happiest people were probably the people of the Pu tribe. The drumming tribe did not have many water moonstones, but the Pu tribe did. After trading with the drumming tribe for so long, plus they hadn't gone on a long journey for a long time, the Pu tribe had stockpiled a lot of water moonstones. Unlike the drumming tribe, who suffered a severe disaster, the Pu tribe's stock was basically intact. The people of the Pu tribe, especially the people from the Pu tribe's expedition team, used their stock to trade for a lot of beast hides and meat from the Yanjiao. They bought them back to make jerky, then froze them. When winter ended and they went on a long journey, they would sell them. It had to be said that the people of the Pu tribe were indeed shrewd merchants. They could see the huge business opportunity in just one trip here. Yanjiao's beast hides were better than any they had seen before. They could stock up and sell them at a higher price when they went on a long journey. Because fearsome beasts were rare on the mainland, their meat and skin, and even some horns and bones could be sold for a high price. This way, they could trade for more goods, and when the time came, they could come back and see if they could scam someone. However, even though they were satisfied, they were still confused. Why did the Yanjiao people think of claiming their territory here? Why didn't they put their fire seed here too? The tribesmen's thinking was still stuck on the idea that they had to leave their fire seed here. Only with a fire seed could they determine their territory. However, in the Flaming River trading point, they didn't feel a trace of Yanjiao's fire seed. That was why the people who came here didn't feel any rejection from the fire seed of another tribe. This was also why they were satisfied. In the past, if they wanted to trade on a large scale, they would go to the Pu tribe the most. Not to mention how stingy the people of the Pu tribe were, just the Pu tribe's fire seed made people feel uncomfortable. That was why many people didn't go there again after the first time. The Flaming River trading point actually didn't have a fire seed. This was what surprised every tribesman who came here. When they returned to their own tribes, they would talk about it after dinner. However, in the end, some people who thought they were smart concluded that Yanjiao didn't use a fire seed to make the Flaming River trading point more attractive. A place without a fire seed would make people feel more at ease and more popular. At the same time, they were also surprised by Yanjiao's courage. Not only did they enclose their territory, they even allowed outsiders to enter their territory. This was definitely not allowed in many tribes. Even some of the famous trading points in the central region were either built on the borders of the bigger tribes or they didn't belong to any tribe. Yanjiao's way of doing things was unique and made people click their tongues in amazement. Letting outsiders enter their territory without a fire seed? weren't they worried about something happening? Actually, if Xiao Xian said he wanted to build a trading point in Yanjiao's current territory, there would be many people who would object. After all, they wouldn't be able to change their mindset in such a short period of time. It wasn't easy to break a 1,000-year-old tradition. How could they let outsiders enter their territory as they pleased? However, it was different if they encroached on a piece of land outside their territory. It was also their territory, but the meaning was different. They could do whatever they wanted. On this day, the temperature had begun to drop significantly day by day. This was the precursor to winter. Many of the leaves in the forest were no longer green. The withered leaves on the ground were blown up by the wind, rustling from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. It was almost winter, and the trading point was about to close. The drumming tribe, who could only watch helplessly, had already left. The Rain tribe and Pu tribe had also stopped and went back yesterday. Xiao Xian was polishing a transparent, shiny object in his hands when he heard someone report that the drumming tribe had sent someone over again. Xiao Xian raised his eyebrows, but he wasn't surprised. He knew that the drumming tribe would definitely come over before winter. Abuli's reaction at that time told him that this would be the case. Xiao Xian put the polished transparent, shiny object into a soft animal skin bag. Then, he got up and left. The last time Abuli came to look for Xiao Xian, and this time, he also said that he wanted to look for Xiao Xian. Since he already knew Xiao Xian, Abuli didn't want to talk to anyone else. He was worried that he would be cheated if he changed people. This time, Abuli didn't come with a rattan basket. Instead, he came with the others, carrying something as thick as a person. This time, he only brought this one thing. They didn't have the strength of the Yanjiao people, so they had to carry it together. This way, they could maintain their speed. Even so, they had to change groups of people to take turns carrying it, or else they wouldn't have been able to hold on. When Xiao Xian walked into the warehouse, Abuli was panting heavily. However, his hand was tightly pressed against the pillar that was as tall as a person. When he saw Xiao Xian, Abuli immediately stood up. However, he didn't leave the pillar. Instead, he said, "You said that a bigger crystal can be exchanged for more things." "That's right." Xiao Xian nodded. Abuli took a deep breath and untied the leaves and rattan ropes that wrapped around the pillar, revealing the hexagonal crystal inside. Duo Kong, who had rushed over after receiving the news, saw the crystal pillar. His jaw almost dropped. He rubbed his hands and walked over. Come, tell me what you want. I'll bring you over. The new batch of fearsome beasts we hunted are not bad. They even have tusks. Do you want them? Abuli was nervous. He didn't know Duo Kong, so he was on guard. Don't worry, this is our tribe's hunting team leader, Duo Kong. Most of the fearsome beast meat and fur you chose last time were hunted by him, Xiao Xian explained. Yes, tell me what kind of fearsome beast you want, I know it all. Let's go, I'll bring you over. Duo Kong smiled warmly. After hearing Xiao Xian's explanation, Abuli let down his guard. When he heard that those were hunted by Duo Kong and knew a lot about fearsome beasts, Abuli was tempted. He wanted to know more about fearsome beasts so that he could go back and brag. At the same time, he wanted to see what other good stuff Yanjiao had. Xiao Xian didn't lie to them. The huge crystal pillar that Abuli brought was exchanged for a lot of things. The same size crystal pillar could be exchanged for twice as much as the smaller ones. When Abuli left, Xiao Xian even gave them a bird's egg. The baby birds that he brought back had already grown up and were laying eggs. Abuli left with a smile on his face. At the same time, he asked Xiao Xian softly if he could exchange for something bigger than that one. After getting a positive answer, Abuli smiled so widely that his eyes disappeared. No matter how many things he stored, if he didn't use them, it would just be a waste of space. After Abuli and the others left, Duo Kong touched the crystal pillar with a smile. Indeed, on this side, this crystal pillar couldn't be exchanged for much. In the eyes of many people, this was just a special stone. However, Duo Kong knew that on the other side of the sea, the slave masters with holes in their brains and weird aesthetics loved these shiny things. Since the two continents were so close, who knew when they would be able to make a trip over? They should keep these things as backup. Maybe one day, they could use these to exchange for more resources from the slave masters' cities. However, at this stage, the most important thing wasn't to cheat the slave masters of their money. Other than Xiao Xian keeping a portion of these crystals for himself, the rest were all sent to the cave where the core seed was placed. Xiao Xian wanted to know what these crystals would become under the influence of the core seed. Chapter 602. After the people of the drumming tribe left, the trading point was officially closed. Although there were still some Yanjia warriors guarding the trading point, it was no longer open to the public. They would be closed for the winter to prepare for an even bigger trading event in the coming year. Snow began to fall from the sky, but it was different from the storm-like winters they had experienced before. This winter was more normal. Perhaps after the disaster, the geographical environment changed, and the weather changed accordingly. After 2 strange and hot winters, this year, the people of the mainland finally welcomed a normal winter. Perhaps, in the forest further away, there were some warm places suitable for birds to live. However, the people of the mainland did not yearn for it. They did not have high expectations, and all they wanted was a normal winter. After Xiao Xian arranged everything in the trading point, he took the things he had on hand back to the tribe and began to polish the lenses. Transparent crystal was suitable for polishing lenses. Xiao Xian tried to make a simple telescope. In the other world, he used to make it for fun. Now, after so many years, in this world, Xiao Xian's memory was a little fuzzy. However, after a few more attempts, Xiao Xian believed that he could make it. The lens barrel was made of bamboo with different thicknesses. It was mainly divided into 3 parts, the front part, the middle part, and the back part. However, the most troublesome part was polishing the lens. After all, it was made by hand, so there would be many defects. If one did not pay attention, it would be worn out. Fortunately, Xiao Xian had been practicing for many years. Although he did not succeed on the first try, he still managed to get a satisfactory result after a few tries. The focal length of the lens was not known, so Xiao Xian roughly used the method of focusing light to determine it. Everything was done manually. When the lens, eyepiece, and lens were finally finished, and the front, middle, and back parts were made, Xiao Xian assembled them and made a simple telescope. Xiao Xian tried to see the situation on the other side of the river. With the eyesight of many totem warriors, they could also see the scene on the other side of the river. However, with the help of binoculars, they could see more clearly. Unfortunately, Xiao Xian was still not satisfied with the result of polishing the lens. The image was not clear enough. This set of lenses could be used to make ground-based telescopes with a variety of magnification factors. All that was needed was to adjust the length of the central tube accordingly. However, Xiao Xian still had to continue improving the telescope if he wanted it to be more useful. In the future, he might even try to make a large aperture telescope. During this time, Old Ku had shown interest in making binoculars. After trying it out with stones, he practiced polishing with small opaque pieces that were knocked off from crystal clusters. Finally, he started trying to make a lens. Xiao Xian had explained the general principles to him. Old Ku didn't understand them, but as long as he knew what to do to get the best results, he could start working. In terms of precision, Old Ku was still better than Xiao Xian when it came to stone crafting. While Xiao Xian and Old Ku were working on polishing lenses, the expedition team returned. The expedition team didn't return before the snow. However, although it was snowing now, it wasn't too cold. Other than a few places near the shore, the rest of the river wasn't frozen. Occasionally, they could even see fishes with sharp teeth jumping out of the water. the expedition team had a mission. Other than trading, they also spread the news of the Flaming River trading point so that more people would know about it. This was the first reason. The second reason was that the expedition team had also investigated the movements of various parts of the mainland. This time, they brought back some special news. Not long after the expedition team returned, someone came to call Xiao Xian to the mountain for a meeting. When Xiao Xian arrived, Ta, who had led the team, was already sitting inside and talking to Ao and the rest. "Xian, we've been waiting for you. Come in." "What's that in your hand?" the shamaness asked. Xiao Xian passed the monocular to the shamaness. "I made a new toy." Ta, who was talking about what he had seen along the way, couldn't help but look over. The shamaness took the monocular and looked around. "What's it for?" "It's for seeing far away. However, this is only my first experiment. It's not perfect yet and there are many areas that need to be improved." Xiao Xian explained as he taught the shamaness how to use the monocular. After listening to Xiao Xian's explanation, the shamaness was interested. She stopped talking about the meeting and got up to walk to the window. She lifted the thick animal skin covering the window and used the monocular to look outside. The hall was located near the top of the mountain. After the disaster, the mountain had grown a lot taller. It was the tallest mountain in the vicinity. Therefore, one could see the situation in the distance from here. The window that the shaman had opened allowed one to see the other side of the river. It's amazing!" the shamaness exclaimed. Hearing this, the others couldn't sit still and wanted to come over to try. However, the shamaness kept the monocular and pressed her hand down. "There's no rush. Let's talk about business first." After that, the shamaness closed the animal skin curtain and walked back to sit down. Before she could sit properly, the monocular was snatched away by the old lady beside her. However, the old lady maintained her composure and didn't immediately walk to the window to look. She studied the monocular for a while before grabbing it and placing it on her lap. The others looked away from the monocular in the old lady's hand. They suppressed their curiosity and started talking about business. Ta told everyone about the results of this trip. The expedition team also followed Xiao Xian's instructions and spread the news about the Flaming River trading point. However, what surprised him the most was the desert that Xiao Xian mentioned. Indeed, due to the disaster, the two continents were closer to each other. However, the closest place to each other was the desert. This made Xiao Xian wonder if the slave masters chose to settle down in the desert because they were waiting for this day. "This time, I was at the trading point and heard some news. I'm sure everyone still remembers the slave masters and slaves that appeared when we fought with Wanshur, right?" Ta said with a serious expression, his eyes filled with suspicion. "Yes, other than the ruler of the desert, Rock Hill City, there were also the defeated slave masters and slaves that were forced out of the desert by Rock Hill City. These people brought their slaves and wandered around. After destroying Wanshur, Xiao Xian also heard some news about them. These slave masters didn't have a good time against the tribesmen. They could only bully the people from the smaller tribes. If it was a battle between tribes, the other tribes wouldn't interfere. However, if the slave masters had the intention to rob someone, the central tribes wouldn't let them go. Hence, even if they were lucky enough to survive, these slave masters didn't have a good life. For the slave masters who had enjoyed a luxurious life, life was not good. Now that they heard that the two continents were close to each other, these slave masters who didn't have a good life wanted to sneak back into the desert and find a way to go to the other continent. Since they didn't have a good life here, they might as well go to another place. Maybe they could live a better life and regain their confidence. With such expectations, the slave masters who wandered around brought their slaves and sneaked back into the desert. Not long after, only a few seriously injured people came out of the desert. Every one of them looked terrified and spoke crazily, as if they had suffered a great shock. A travel team that passed by the desert met them and heard the news from them. Those people said that there were some monsters in the desert. Monsters in human form. Ta said in a low voice. Monsters in human form? Xiao Xian was puzzled. That's right. Those who were lucky enough to escape died not long after. It said that none of the slave masters and slaves who entered the desert came out alive. No one knows what is happening in the desert now. Tower told him the information he had obtained during this long journey. Those monsters in human form, have they gone outside the desert? Xiao Xian asked. Ta shook his head. Never heard of it. The house fell silent as they pondered the authenticity of this news. Then should we be on guard? What if those people, monsters, come out? Duo Kong said. Maybe it's the people from Rock Hill City. Ao guessed. That's possible. If those monsters in human form are true, it's most likely related to Rock Hill City. However, Rock Hill City's main target is the other side of the sea. They shouldn't affect us in the short term. Xiao Xian said, instead of worrying about that, why don't we use this opportunity to change the Flaming River region? Chapter 603. That's right. Zheng Luo nodded. Even if something happens in the desert, we can't do anything now. Why don't we use this opportunity to develop? We want to establish our position as the largest tribe in the Flaming River region. We don't have to worry about the desert. Even if something happens there, they'll fight their own battles and we'll do our own. The two shamans agreed. There's one more thing, the shaman said, after this winter, Yanjiao will have to make some changes. Xiao Xian knew what the shaman meant by changes. Actually, after the destruction of Wanshe, the tribe had been looking for a chance to make changes. After all, a tribe couldn't have two chiefs and two shamans forever if they wanted to continue developing. After the division of power, the people in the tribe would feel divided. It would be hard to make a decision on anything. Now that the disaster was over, they were sure to live here for a long time. The new chief and shaman would be appointed soon. Of course, Guizhe would take over as the new shaman. Guizhe also participated in the high-level meetings of the tribe. In the past year, the two shamans had passed on most of the knowledge they wanted to impart to Guizhe. The rest would be left for Guizhe to experience on her own. As for the new leader, it was decided long ago that Guizhe would succeed him. Duo Kong and Ta would be the two main leaders. The two shamans and chief would step down and become elders like Xiao Xian. However, the Grand Elder would still be Xiao Xian. Because they were prepared, no one was surprised when the shaman said this. When winter ends and the trading point reopens, we will invite the tribesmen from the Flaming River region over. Then, everyone will know who the chief and shaman of Yanjiao are, Ao said. This was the result of Xiao Xian's discussion with them. When the trading point reopened, they would hold a banquet and invite the representatives of the tribes from the Flaming River region. In Ao's words, it was to let them feel the power of the flaming horns. As winter came, the temperature dropped. The ducks didn't come out of their sheds. The vegetable fields and animal pens were also protected. The green-faced fanged beasts went into hibernation again. The days passed. It was the coldest time of winter. It was still snowing. However, for the Yanjiao people who had experienced the stormy winter here, this was a rather mild winter. Even the children who had not awakened their totemic power could go out and play for a while. Many places on the Flaming River were covered in a layer of ice. Snow piled up on the surface of the ice, making the Flaming River look almost the same color as the land. In the upper reaches of the Flaming River, on a bank slightly further away from the Yanjiao tribe, a huge fearsome beast walked in the snow. It shook its long gray fur and shook off the snow on its body. Then, it raised its head and looked ahead. Even though it was far away, it could still smell the food coming from there. His crimson-red tongue stuck out and brushed past his sharp fangs. It lifted its feet and walked forward. The white snow was imprinted with the shape of a millstone-sized beast's claw. The white fog exhaled by the beast merged with the whiteness of the ground. Other than the sound of its footsteps on the snow, there was only the sound of its breathing. It was getting closer. It was getting closer. There was a lot of food ahead. It could even hear the sound of food. However, just as it was about to walk over, its body froze. There was a cracking sound under its feet. The beast felt a sense of danger and its fur stood on end. It stopped moving forward and turned to run. Unfortunately, it was still too slow. When it turned around, it used too much force and the thin layer of ice cracked. The cracks quickly spread to the surroundings. Large chunks of ice cracked and sank. The huge figure fell into the river. Splash! The splash of water broke the layer of snow on the surface of the ice. The beast's struggle made the ice crack even wider. Under the water, a group of hungry piranhas with mouths full of sharp teeth became agitated and started biting. Even though many of them were pulled out of the water and flapped their tails in the snow, they still opened their mouths and tried to bite something. The beast roared angrily, its voice echoing across the empty river. Although the river was frozen in winter, the temperature didn't make the layer of ice thick enough, especially in the middle of the river. It was dangerous even for humans to walk on it, let alone larger beasts. They could only walk a short distance before their weight broke the layer of ice. The beast was still struggling in the river. It waved its claws and many piranhas could be seen biting onto its skin. This was a common sight this winter. That was why even though the dangerous river was gone and the river was frozen, many beasts still couldn't break through the barrier. This made the rain and drumming tribesmen feel much more at ease. However, this was only the case in this part of the flaming river. If they went further upstream or downstream, would there be places with lower temperatures? Would the layer of ice be thicker? Would there be more beasts crossing the river from this side of the forest to the other side? They didn't know. The Yanjiao people rarely went out to hunt in winter. They would only occasionally send a group of people to guard the trading point. The river was frozen and ships couldn't travel, so they had Cha-Cha transport them by air. The two sides of the river weren't far apart anyway, so they could make a few trips back and forth. Xiao Xian had thought of making some transport by air, like gliders and hot air balloons. However, although there weren't continuous strong winds in winter, there would be some from time to time. No matter what, the safest way was to have Cha-Cha transport them by air. Xiao Xian spent most of his time at home polishing lenses with old Ku. Today, Xiao Xian was polishing lenses when someone came to report. The shaman of the drumming tribe is here. The shaman of the drumming tribe? Xiao Xian put down the things in his hands and asked the soldier. He didn't go up the mountain to look for the chief and shaman. He did, but he said he was looking for you, Grand Elder, said the soldier. Xiao Xian didn't know why the shaman of the drumming tribe was here at this time, so he asked for the location and walked down the mountain. Other than the meeting hall on the mountain, there was another one at the foot of the mountain. Most of the time, people from the other side of the river would meet there to discuss matters. At this time, the shaman of the drumming tribe was already waiting there. Before Xiao Xian walked into the stone house, he sensed something and looked up at the river. The shaman of the drumming tribe didn't come here on a raft because many parts of the river were frozen. He came here on a crocodile. Xiao Xian thought that the crocodiles would find a place to hibernate and wouldn't come out in this cold weather. He hadn't seen any crocodiles in the past few days. Most reptiles didn't like cold weather. He didn't expect there to be something special. On the surface of the river covered with a layer of snow, there was a long path in the middle of the river. A crocodile's head rested on the ice, facing this way. When Xiao Xian looked over, the crocodile's closed eyes opened. Although they were a little far away, Xiao Xian could still see the dark brown irises in its eyes. Looking away, Xiao Xian opened the door and walked into the stone house. In the house, the shaman of the drumming tribe was sitting by the fire, holding a shining crystal in his hand. That crystal wasn't a water moon stone, but a stone similar to water moon stones that Xiao Xian brought over from the other side of the sea. Chapter 604. Seeing the stone in the shaman's hand, Xiao Xian knew why he came. On the other side of the sea, Xiao Xian found traces of crocodiles in the forest. He also found many stones left by the crocodiles. He just wanted to check it out, but he didn't expect to find something useful. Unlike the water moon stone, which could only be used after absorbing Yang Guang's power, Xiao Xian called it the water sun stone. At that time, Xiao Xian made a lot of water sun stones. When they crossed the sea, the people on the other side also brought the stones over. But after coming here, the water sun stone was more convenient and less expensive, so people used it more often. It should be the drumming tribe people who saw Yanjiao warriors using the water sun stone. Seeing Xiao Xian come in, the shaman of the drumming tribe looked away from the stone in his hand. He was quite excited. I took the liberty of coming here to ask Elder Xiao Xian, where did you get this stone? Xiao Xian thought for a moment and said, these stones were brought over from the other side of the sea. The shaman nodded. He already knew this. Elder Xiao Xian, can you tell me the origin of this stone in detail? Sure. Xiao Xian told the shaman about how he found the stone, but he didn't explain the process in detail. At that time, I just wanted to try. I didn't expect to succeed. Maybe it's because my power of inheritance is special. The shaman's expression was very subtle. He couldn't figure it out. He could understand finding a stone left by crocodiles in a distant place. After all, crocodiles weren't the only ones in the drumming tribe. There were groups of crocodiles in many places. But how did Xiao Xian, a Yanjiao man, make this stone? Wasn't it exclusive to the drumming tribe? But Xiao Xian wouldn't tell his secret. He could only say this. So, after staring at the stone in his hand for a while, the shaman said, I don't know if you have more of these stones. After a pause, he added, stones left by unformed treasure fish. Yes. Can I borrow? Cough. The shaman of the drumming tribe suddenly remembered that his tribe had a huge debt. He hadn't paid it back yet, and now he had to borrow it again. However, this matter was different. He had to borrow it, or else he would keep thinking about it. Sure, wait a moment. Xiao Xian went back and took one of the stones he brought back. When he decided to cross the sea, Xiao Xian brought a few raw stones with him. Since the shaman of the drumming tribe wanted to have a look, there was no harm in giving them one. Holding the stone that Xiao Xian handed over, the shaman of the drumming tribe carefully observed it. Although the shape was similar, he could feel that it was not left behind by the crocodiles of their tribe. There was a strange smell on it that they could recognize. However, they were closer to the crocodiles after all. Even though they knew that it was an unfamiliar aura, they did not reject it. This. Can I borrow it for a few days? The drumming shaman asked carefully. There was nothing he could do about it. In front of his creditor, he was always short of breath. No problem. Xiao Xian did not mind. Thank you. The shaman of the drumming tribe thanked him sincerely. Then, he carefully put the stone into his pouch. He thought of something and looked at Xiao Xian. Elder Xiao Xian, you said that you changed the stone left behind by Baoyu? Yes. You didn't use the power of the fire seed? I mean, you did it with your own ability? Yes. How is that possible? The shaman of the drumming tribe was puzzled. The drumming tribe only produced water moon stones when the moon was full. Under the stimulation of the fire seed, the stones would form in the water moon passage. But why would something like what Xiao Xian said happen? If they didn't see the stone that was different from the water moon stone, they wouldn't have believed it. Before leaving, the shaman of the drumming tribe asked a question. He didn't expect to get an answer, but he couldn't help but ask. I didn't feel Yanjiao's fire seed. Did something happen? Ever since the day they moved here from Yanjiao, the drumming tribe didn't feel any suppression or rejection from the fire seed. At first, they didn't notice it. At that time, the impact of the disaster was too great. Then, Something big happened by the river. They didn't have time to think about anything else. Then, everything stabilized. It was terrifying. They couldn't feel the fire seed. Moreover, these Yanjiao people seemed to have changed since the first time they met them. They couldn't tell why, but they could feel that they were different from the first time they met the Yanjiao people. A tribe without a fire seed would become a wanderer. This was something everyone on the mainland knew. But now, they couldn't feel Yanjiao's fire seed. What was strange was that the Yanjiao people didn't lose their power. Instead, they seemed to be stronger. They were also more daring in their actions. For example, in the outer circle. "We're fine," Xiao Xian said. As for the fire seed, it's not in the fire pit anymore. The shaman of the drumming tribe was confused. Not in the fire pit? He still didn't understand. If the fire seed isn't in the fire pit, where else could it be? Xiao Xian looked at him meaningfully. Then, he pointed at his forehead. "Here, Anne." He moved his hand to his chest and pointed at his heart. "Here." The shaman of the drumming tribe narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have thought of something, but he wasn't sure what it was. His mind was a mess. He could only vaguely feel something. After sitting in a daze for a while, the shaman of the drumming tribe suddenly woke up. He looked around. Xiao Xian had already left. He didn't know how long he had been sitting there alone. Someone poured a new cup of herbal tea on the table in front of him. But the tea was already cold. Someone had added more wood to the fire beside him. He didn't notice any of this. He was thinking about Xiao Xian's words just now. After moving his slightly stiff body, the shaman of the drumming tribe stood up. He touched the stone inside the pouch and walked out to the riverbank. There were Yanjiao warriors patrolling the riverbank. They stood on the watchtower and greeted the shaman of the drumming tribe. The shaman of the drumming tribe smiled in response. Then, he stepped onto the ice on the river. His footsteps were so shallow that they couldn't even be seen. He stepped on the ice step by step, making a soft creaking sound. The ice on the riverbank was slightly thicker. He didn't have to worry about the ice breaking. He walked until he reached the place where the crocodile was waiting. Before he stepped onto the crocodile's back, he turned around and looked in the direction of the Yanjiao tribe. As a shaman, he was more sensitive to the power of the fire seed. He could feel things that others couldn't. The Yanjiao fire seed was indeed gone. But this was only on the surface. He could feel the burning heat of the Yanjiao fire seed in places that people couldn't see. It was there, on that mountain, everywhere. Thinking back to what Xiao Xian said in the stone house, the shaman of the drumming tribe took a deep breath and stepped onto the crocodile's back. The back of the crocodile, which was more than 10 meters long, surfaced from the water. Its swaying tail left ripples in the water. Under the water, there were some unwilling piranhas wandering around, but they didn't come close. The shaman of the drumming tribe looked in the direction of his tribe. He was deep in thought. The Yanjiao people seemed to have chosen a different path. How would the drumming tribe choose? Chapter 605. Xiao Xian knew that the shaman of the drumming tribe would be able to guess the changes in the fire seed. As for his final decision, Xiao Xian didn't know. Not every tribe had the courage and determination to change. After all, to the tribesmen, anything related to the fire seed was related to the survival of their tribe. They couldn't be careless. The winter weather was still cold. In comparison, the Yanjiao people were the busiest in this area. Xiao Xian occasionally went to discuss matters with the chief and shaman after winter. He was still working on the trading point. The rest of his time was spent polishing lenses. It wasn't an easy job. Compared to Xiao Xian's calmness, the shaman of the drumming tribe hadn't slept well for 7 days after leaving Yanjiao. The shaman of the drumming tribe wasn't old, but his personality was similar to that of the Yanjiao shamans. He looked approachable, but in reality, he had a lot of thoughts. It was just that he didn't show it on the surface. It was because he thought too much that he felt conflicted. Every time he closed his eyes, he would think of many things. Things that had happened and things that hadn't happened yet. Sometimes, he would even break out in a cold sweat. With bloodshot eyes, the shaman of the drumming tribe called Fan Mu over to discuss the fire seed with Fan Mu. A few days passed. The drumming tribe was like a hibernating crocodile that rarely went out. It was very quiet. Everyone was too lazy to move in their own houses. Creak, the shaman of the drumming tribe walked out of the house with Fan Mu and a few other elders. The wood under their feet creaked when they stepped on it. The people who came out of the house all had a solemn aura. Even Yang Guang, who rarely came out in the winter, seemed much colder. Since we've decided, I'll go to Yanjiao with Fan Mu. The shaman of the drumming tribe looked across the flaming river and sighed. His worried gaze became determined. For thousands of years, the drumming tribe seemed peaceful, but there were many hidden dangers. The shaman and chief of the drumming tribe knew the dangers. Actually, 200 years ago, the shaman of the drumming tribe wanted to change, but he didn't know where to start because he didn't know how. And now, when they took over the leadership, they finally saw the opportunity. Therefore, on the 15th day after the shaman of the drumming tribe left Yanjiao, Xiao Xian met the shaman of the opposite tribe at the foot of the mountain again. At the same time, the chief of the drumming tribe, Fan Mu, was also there. Actually, Xiao Xian was also thinking about what decision the drumming tribe would make. No matter what they chose, they needed time to consider. But Xiao Xian didn't expect the people of the drumming tribe to make a decision in just 15 days. When Yang Sui of the Rain tribe learned about the fire seed, he had been thinking about it until now. He was still hesitating. After sitting down, the shaman of the drumming tribe spoke his mind about the fire seed. I hope Elder Xiao Xian can tell us more about it. Xiao Xian stared at the two people across the table for 2 seconds. He didn't keep them in suspense. The people of the drumming tribe preferred to be direct and decisive. They didn't like to beat around the bush, which was similar to Yanjiao. However, Xiao Xian didn't tell them about the change of the fire seed immediately. Instead, he explained some things first. They had to know about it sooner or later. On the other side of the sea, there are some slave owners. No, there are many slave owners. I believe you've heard about this from the warriors of Yanjiao. The shaman and Fan Mu of the drumming tribe nodded. Ever since they arrived from Yanjiao, there had been a lot of communication between the two tribes. Many things couldn't be hidden forever. Not everyone was so tight-lipped. If they talked too much, they might accidentally let the cat out of the bag. Moreover, there were people of the Rain tribe. Some of the people of the drumming tribe already knew that some people from Yanjiao came from the other side of the sea. There are also many tribes on the other side of the sea, but they are different from here. They don't have a fire seed. At this point, Xiao Xian noticed an inexplicable light flashing in the eyes of the two people across the table. A long time ago, the tribes on the other side also had a fire seed. They called it the primitive fire seed. But later, they all chose to merge the fire seed, which is what we do in Yanjiao today. After a pause, Xiao Xian continued, I can roughly guess your decision. But, for the sake of our friendship, there are some things I need to remind you of. The people of the Rain tribe knew about the fire seed long ago, but they didn't choose to change it because there were also difficulties in doing so. Tribesmen gathered together because of the fire seed, because the fire seed is everything. If the fire seed exists, the tribe exists. If the fire seed is extinguished, the tribe will die. But if there is no fire seed, even if the fire seed is not extinguished, it will be scattered. The power that brought the tribesmen together will also disappear. Some tribes on the other side of the sea will disappear. They are not like the wanderers on our side. They are scattered, but their power is still there. They will fight on their own and no longer gather together. With such concerns, do you still choose to do this? Xiao Xian looked at the other side. Fan Mu frowned. He didn't control his emotions as well as the shaman. It could be seen that he was also in a mess. But he still didn't change his mind. The shaman of the drumming tribe said slowly, "In fact, I have also considered this. But I believe that we, the people of the drumming tribe, will not be easily shaken. No matter what the form of the fire seed is, the people of the drumming tribe will always be together." Xiao Xian made a comparison and nodded in his heart. Wasn't that right? The people of the drumming tribe were not as hesitant as the people of the rain tribe. They were more united, and their core was more cohesive. Under the seemingly fierce appearance, they actually had the heart of an otaku. The probability of people dispersing was much higher in the rain tribe than in the drumming tribe. Xiao Xian had known the people of the drumming tribe for a long time. Although he didn't really spend much time with them, he could infer some things. According to Xiao Xian's understanding of the people of the drumming tribe, if they didn't lack food and had a stable life, they would rather stay in one place than wander around. Sometimes they would want to go out and see the world, but most of the time, they would stay in the same place. Even if they had the water moon stone, which was almost used as a universal currency, they would never have other thoughts. The drumming tribe did have some hidden problems, perhaps more than what Xiao Xian knew. But even so, Xiao Xian was still surprised that they made such a big decision within 15 days. Have you really made up your mind? Xiao Xian asked again. Yes. Fan Mu patted the table as if to encourage himself. Then he stood up and bowed seriously to Xiao Xian with the etiquette of the drumming tribe. I hope Elder Xiao Xian can tell us. As he spoke, Fan Mu took out an animal skin roll from his animal skin coat and handed it to Xiao Xian. It was a promise and an oath. Any request had a price, and what was written on it was the decision made by the drumming tribe's senior leaders after discussion. Xiao Xian glanced at it and put it away. I'll discuss this with our Yanjiao shaman and chief, and I'll tell you the final decision. Thank you. The shaman of the drumming tribe and the chief, Fan Mu, bowed to Xiao Xian seriously again. Tribesmen's bows were not as pleasing to the eye as those pretentious slave masters, but they were more direct and serious. Chapter 606. The Yanjiao people had always had a good impression of the drumming tribe. Although many people didn't say it, Xiao Xian knew that the drumming tribe was still very important to the Yanjiao people. After all, when the river was still there, the first tribe they saw when they crossed the river was the drumming tribe. That was the first tribe they saw when Yanjiao returned from the world. After seeing the promise on the animal skin scroll, the Yanjiao shaman and chief nodded without hesitation. The drumming tribe would support Yanjiao and would not betray them. In fact, if the two continents hadn't changed and were still so far apart, the tribes here would have continued to live as they were. But now, the two continents were so close to each other that no one knew what would happen in the future. One side had nothing to worry about, while the other side had their hands tied because of the ancient fire seed. Once a conflict broke out, it was obvious which side the situation would favor. Helping the drumming tribe was also helping Yanjiao. They could even get a helping hand. But Zheng Luo was worried. Didn't you say that the drumming tribe's water moon stones came from the water moon canal? And the drumming tribe's water moon canal was formed because of the fire seed. If the ancient fire seed is gone, does that mean the drumming tribe's water moon stones are gone too? I asked them about this, Xiao Xian said. At that time, the shaman and Fan Mu seemed very confident. To put it bluntly, the drumming shaman and Fan Mu had thought about this question before, but they didn't think it was a big problem. The drumming tribe was more familiar with water moon stones because they belonged to the drumming tribe. If Xiao Xian, a non-frooming tribesman, could make water moon stones without the fire seed, why couldn't the drumming tribe do the same? What others saw as blind confidence was natural for the drumming tribe. With Xiao Xian as an example, the drumming shaman and Fan Mu didn't think they would fail. If this happened to the Rain tribe, they would probably struggle for at least half a year. In the Rain tribe's eyes, the drumming tribe made such a decision in such a short time? They were too careless and didn't think through it thoroughly. They lacked the nerve called caution. They only grew in height, but not in brains. But Xiao Xian could tell from his conversation with the drumming shaman and Fan Mu that they were serious. Perhaps they had been waiting for this day for a long time. Of course, due to their personalities, different tribes had different ways of doing things. That was why the current situation was so different. Since he decided to tell the drumming tribe about the fire seed, Xiao Xian didn't delay. The next day, he called the drumming shaman over. The two shamans from Yanjiao, the pseudo-shaman Guizhe, the drumming shaman, and the Xiao Xian, talked for a while. The two shamans from Yanjiao talked about their experiences and summarized the core points left by their ancestors. Merging the fire seed wasn't easy, there were many details to consider. The drumming shaman stayed in Yanjiao for 3 days and 3 nights without sleep. Finally, he sorted out a plan and left with anxiety and excitement. The crocodile that sent the drumming shaman away was still the same one. It was different from the others. In the past, when the crocodiles were active, it didn't stand out, but in winter, it stood out. Every few decades, a crocodile like this would appear in the drumming tribe. It wasn't the leader of the crocodiles, but it would follow the drumming shaman until the next special crocodile appeared. Xiao Xian was just curious about the special crocodile in the drumming tribe. After that, he didn't pay much attention to it and focused on the merging of the fire seed. It was winter now and there were no enemies. They didn't have to worry about other tribes attacking them. It was indeed a good opportunity, but it wasn't right either. The two shamans from Yanjiao had advised the drumming shaman that if they merged the fire seed after winter, it would be less dangerous. After all, that was the important time for many tribes to sacrifice. Perhaps the fire seed would be more active then. However, this suggestion was rejected by the shaman of the drumming tribe. The flaming horns didn't insist either. It was up to the other party to decide what to do in the future. They only said what they had to say. As for what to do in the future, it was still up to them. So, on a cold day, when Yang Guang appeared and disappeared, snow began to fall. The drumming tribe held a very important sacrifice. For such a small tribe, no one cared whether or not they would hold a sacrifice ceremony, and no one knew when they would hold one. But this time, it was different. In the falling snow, a white flame surged and a brown crocodile appeared in the air. It was just a shadow, the totem of the drumming tribe. The brown crocodile was surrounded by a circle of white flame, which made it even colder in the snow. Across the river, Xiao Xian could hear the crocodiles that were supposed to be hibernating. There was no earth-shattering scene like when the Yanjiao tribe merged the fire seed, but there was still a lot of noise. At least all the tribes living nearby could feel the strong change in the fire seed. The fire seed of a foreign tribe was too strong. As long as one was alive, they could feel it. Unless they were in hibernation, they couldn't ignore it. What's going on? Yang Sui, who was wrapped in animal skin and drinking soup beside the fire, dropped the bowl of soup on the ground. He didn't care about the animal skin and jumped up like a spring. He opened the door and rushed out. Many people of the Rain tribe didn't know what was going on and looked out of the window. Yang Sui rushed out directly. He even forgot that he didn't wear shoes and stepped directly into the snow. Looking in one direction, Yang Sui blinked and blinked again. His mouth was wide open, but he couldn't say a word. He just stared in that direction. After a long while, Yang Sui squeezed out 2 words. Crazy. Others might not know what was going on, but as a shaman, Yang Sui could clearly feel the changes in the fire seed. He had even simulated similar scenes countless times in his mind. However, he always simulated his own tribe. But now, the Rain tribe wasn't the one that was experiencing the changes. It was too sudden. He didn't expect that someone could make such a decision before them. The Rain tribe was the first to contact the Yanjiao tribe. In addition to the Yanjiao tribe, the Rain tribe was also the first to have the idea of merging the fire seed. But now, the crocodiles that were supposed to be hibernating were melting. Merging. Fire. Seed. Fire. How long had it been? Those people of the drumming tribe made such a decision so easily. If they weren't crazy, then what were they? Yang Sui stood in the face of the cold wind. His feet were covered with a layer of snow, but he didn't seem to feel cold. He stared at the direction of the drumming tribe. There seemed to be a white flame surging in the sky. After a long time, when the vague white flame in the sky disappeared, the turbulent aura of the fire seed faded away, and everything became calm again. Yang Sui came back to his senses. He stopped the nearest person and asked him to call the leader and the old guys who had always opposed his decision to come over. I don't care what they are doing. Tell them to come to me immediately. Yang Sui was about to go back to the house, but as soon as he wanted to move, he fell directly on the ground. His legs were so cold that he couldn't feel them. In the end, he had to be carried back to the house. When he went back to the house, Yang Sui was still sighing. How could those bastards beat us to it? Chapter 607. The drumming tribe's actions made Yang Sui's wavering heart firm up. Although he didn't know why the crocodiles would suddenly make such a hasty decision, he had a feeling that it was worth it when the fire seed of the drumming tribe was in turmoil. After dragging it out for so long, Yang Sui didn't have the patience to wait any longer. Now was the time to solve this problem while everyone was resting. When the Rain tribe gathered their people to discuss, the people of the other tribes nearby felt the change, but they didn't know why there was such a big movement. Some of the more timid ones even gave up their original plans to go out and hid at home, afraid that another destructive event would happen. Too many things had happened in the past 2 years, and they were all scared. They should have succeeded, Xiao Xian said as he stood on the mountain, looking at the drumming tribe on the other side of the river. Yes. The shamaness was relieved. She had a good impression of the drumming tribe. Even the people who came from the other side of the sea liked the drumming tribe. After interacting with so many tribes, the drumming tribe was their best neighbor. The drumming tribe also produced water moonstones, so they didn't want anything to happen to the drumming tribe. Now that the drumming tribe had successfully merged with the drumming tribe, they were naturally happy. 2 days later, Xiao Xian, the shamaness and the chief went to the drumming tribe to visit their new neighbor who had just merged with their fire seed. In these 2 days, the complicated emotions of the drumming tribesmen had faded away. However, when Xiao Xian went over, he could still feel a sense of loss from the drumming tribesmen, but they couldn't help but be excited. The fire seed was gone and the fire pond no longer had a fire that burned all year round. It also couldn't provide them with any protection. The power of the fire seed had been dispersed into every drumming tribesman's body. They could only rely on themselves from now on. Since the founding of the tribe, everyone was already used to the fire seed's customs. Now that there was a sudden change, no one could accept it immediately. Perhaps only the young children could accept it quickly. What do you think? Xiao Xian asked Fu Shi, who was chopping wood silently. Actually, the drumming tribesmen had already prepared all kinds of firewood before winter came. The haystacks behind the house were still tall. It's all right. After pondering for a while, Fu Shi finally managed to squeeze out 2 words. Then, he continued to chop the firewood. While waving the stone axe, he said, I feel like I'm full of energy, but something's not right. It's normal. Our tribe was like this at the beginning too. Xiao Xian said, you'll get used to it. Sigh. Fu Shi didn't know how to express his thoughts, so he didn't say anything and continued to chop the firewood. In the drumming tribe, there were many people like Fu Shi. They felt their whole body was full of energy, but at the same time, something was not right. This was because the fire seed had not completely merged with their bodies. It'll be fine once the fusion is completed. To the drumming tribe, the fire seed was one of the most important things. Another important thing was the water moon stones. After the disappearance of the primitive fire seed, the water moon channel, which originally produced water moon stones, could no longer obtain energy from the fire seed. The water moon stones could only be obtained through other channels. With Xiao Xian as an example, after the drumming shaman merged with the fire seed, he tried to turn the water moon stones into glowing water moon stones. However, he never succeeded. The drumming shaman wasn't in a hurry. He knew there were two problems to solve. First, he had to complete the fusion of the fire seed in his body. Secondly, the water moon stones were produced when the moon was at its brightest. Other than the fire seed, it also borrowed the moonlight. So, he thought, at least he had to wait until the moon came out. Seeing that the drumming tribe hadn't fully adapted yet, but nothing bad happened, the Xiao Xian and the others felt a little relieved. As for the water moon stones, they could only wait until the moon came out to see if they could succeed. Even if they couldn't get the water moon stones, the drumming shaman didn't regret his decision. After the drumming tribe merged their fire seed, although it was still winter and snow fell from time to time, it didn't stop those curious people from coming over to investigate. Towards these people, the drumming tribe's reaction was still calm. They stopped those people from getting close to the tribe and told the people in the tribe to do what they needed to do. It would be best if they could finish merging their fire seed before winter ended. Once winter ended, they would have a lot of things to do. If they didn't have the water moonstones, they would have to find another way to survive. As for Yanjiao, the Yanjiao people were also worried. They decided to reopen the trading point after the end of winter when the weather warmed up. They would also invite the leaders of the other tribes living in the Flaming River region to participate. However, after thinking about it, they felt that their original plan was far from enough. In other words, they felt that this wasn't enough to show off Yanjiao's strength. Tribesmen had their own rules, which were different from the slave masters. Perhaps many people on the other side of the sea couldn't understand these rules, but here it was. That was why if they wanted to start their first non-violent war here, they had to think about it carefully. These days, Xiao Xian was often called to the mountain for discussions. However, even though Xiao Xian had already integrated into the tribe and tried his best to get used to the tribe's way of thinking, Xiao Xian's way of thinking was different from traditional tribesmen. That was why when it came to matters like this, Xiao Xian mostly listened to other people's suggestions. He rarely expressed his opinion. However, the winter was passing day by day, and it was almost over. If the winter ended early this year, the moon would come out in a few days. They had to solve this matter before the end of the winter. Only then would they have time to act. Otherwise, if they dilly-dallied until the end of the winter to make a decision slowly, things would be rushed later. What should we do? Some people thought that they should invite people from further away. Others thought that they should put on a show to show off their strength, especially their weapons. However, there were different voices of disagreement. Seeing the people in the room arguing, Xiao Xian thought of something. He turned to the shamaness and said, "Why don't we have a show-off feast?" Although the tribe hadn't officially announced the new leader, they had already sat down according to the new order. Xiao Xian sat with the other elders, and the shamaness sat next to him. After Xiao Xian finished speaking, the room fell silent. Duo Kang and Ta, who were arguing, turned to look at Xiao Xian. Everyone else also looked at Xiao Xian, waiting for Xiao Xian to continue. Although Xiao Xian's voice wasn't loud, he only wanted to discuss with the shamaness. Everyone else was fighting for their seats, so they might not notice him. Unexpectedly, as soon as he moved, everyone looked over and pricked up their ears. With their strength and hearing, it wasn't difficult for them to hear Xiao Xian's words. Xiao Xian didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that everyone's heartbeat seemed to be louder and faster. Xiao Xian saw that everyone was looking at him, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at the shamaness, then at the other elders. "I think Xian's words are feasible." Ao touched the hilt of his knife, and his eyes flashed. He couldn't help but tap the back of the knife with his fingernails. He took a deep breath and tried to speak in a calm tone. A show-off feast is indeed a very good idea. Thousands of years have passed, and Yanjiao hasn't held one yet. Ao thought of something and looked at Zheng Luo. He only knew about the situation here, not the other side, so he looked at Zheng Luo for his opinion. Zheng Luo smiled bitterly and shook his head. We haven't held one either. There were records of banquets in their ancestors' handwritten notes, and there were also some stories that were passed down from generation to generation that involved banquets. However, those were only heard as stories and never taken seriously. Perhaps they had such dreams when they were young, but after they became adults, the burden on them increased, and they became more realistic. They no longer had extravagant hopes, and felt that it was good enough to be alive. Even though the tribe's situation had improved, they never thought about it. It could be said that every tribesman who knew about show-off feasts, whether they were Yanjiao or outsiders, had a dream that one day they could hold a show-off feast. However, until now, in the Flaming Horns tribe, in the past 1,000 years, no one had done it. If you asked what Yanjiao people's dreams were, one of them would definitely be a show-off feast. Are we really going to do it? Duo Kong whispered. His voice was much softer than before, but it wasn't because he lacked confidence or had different opinions. He was just too excited and tried to suppress his emotions so he didn't shout. The true emotions in his eyes showed how much he agreed with Xiao Xian's words. His burning eyes seemed to tell the decision-maker that he was just waiting for the announcement to begin preparations. Looking at the others, whether it was Ao and Zheng Luo, who had retired as elders, or the current quasi-chief Gigu and pseudo-adept Guizhe, their eyes flashed with a burning light. Show-off feast, if Xiao Xian hadn't mentioned it, they wouldn't have thought about it. These 3 words had been mentioned for 1,000 years. Back then, it was so unattainable, but now it made their hearts pound, and they felt that they could give it a try. His blood seemed to boil, and his body temperature seemed to rise. His face flushed with excitement, and his breathing became rapid. He rubbed the hilt of his sword more frequently, and his breath became turbulent. He was like a volcano that had been suppressed for 1,000 years, and was about to erupt. Was it finally coming? Could Yanjiao really hold a show-off feast? Not for you, not for me, not for anyone, but for the entire tribe. Not for anyone in the tribe, but for the other tribes living in the Flaming River region. Xiao Xian used to think that the people who did this were arrogant. Arrogant. Idiotic. But now, Xiao Xian could understand the feelings and thoughts of the other tribesmen. In order to make people follow you willingly, you didn't need to use force to beat them up again and again, nor did you need to persuade them one by one, nor did you need to offer them benefits. You just needed to hold a show-off feast, and naturally, countless followers would come willingly to worship you. Your reputation would also rise. In the middle of winter, they felt their blood boiling uncontrollably, as if it was about to spurt out of their pores. They couldn't stay calm. What was their purpose in opening up the trading point and inviting other tribesmen? Of course, it was to increase Yanjiao's prestige in this region. Gain the support of other tribes, including the drumming tribe, and gain their respect. If they could do this, then it would indeed be a good way to prove Yanjiao's strength and status. In the eyes of many people, the distorted values and outlook on life were like a skill that emitted holy light in such a living environment and era. Only those who could truly master it could have such a respectable aura. He had to show off. Not only did he have to show off, he had to do it well. Now, Xiao Xian was about to do what he had dreamed of when he was still living in the cave. He still remembered that night, when Lang Jie and the others were roasting meat by the fire. They had said to Xiao Xian in the tone of an elder, "You still don't understand." Back then, Xiao Xian had thought that one day, he would be an idiot too. Now, not only was he about to do what he thought was an idiot, he was about to bring the entire Yanjiao tribe with him. What does everyone think of Elder Xiao Xian's suggestion? The old woman saw that no one spoke and couldn't help but slam the cane in her hand on the ground. The sound of the walking stick hitting the ground with a bang brought everyone back to their senses. Their eyes were out of focus, and they were secretly enjoying themselves. What do you think? This suggestion was too damn good. Duo Kong wanted to stand up and jump up and down to show his excitement. If anyone has a different opinion, you can speak up, Gigu said. Those who were about to speak up because of the old woman's words quickly shut their mouths. The muscles around their mouths were twitching because they had closed their mouths too hard. It affected their facial nerves, making them look like they were gnashing their teeth. The room was so quiet that only the sound of everyone's heavy breathing could be heard. After waiting for a while and seeing that no one responded, the shaman chuckled and nodded to Gigu, who was sitting at the front. Gigu's gaze swept over the elders. He didn't say anything, but he could tell the other party's decision through eye contact. Finally, his gaze swept over Xiao Xian, who was sitting at the front of the elders' seats. Seeing Xiao Xian nod, Gigu and Guizhe whispered to each other before saying, "If that's the case, then we'll do as the great elder says. However, it's still winter, so it's not the best time to hunt. After winter ends, the tribe will start moving." No one objected to this decision. Anyway, winter was almost over. They could use this time to prepare. Once winter was over, they would start hunting. Duo Kong also planned to hunt an even fiercer beast as a trophy. When the time came, he could show it off at the banquet and let everyone know that it was him, the leader of the Yanjiao tribe, who hunted it. It was the result of him, Duo Kong, leading the team. After the meeting ended, everyone hurriedly left and gathered their main subordinates. They rubbed their palms together and planned to do something big after winter ended. In the past, they had imagined that the tribe wouldn't have to worry about food and water. Now, they had done it. In the past, they had imagined that the tribe could become stronger and have more things that others didn't have. Now, they had done it, and they would do even better in the future. In the past, when they were just children who hadn't awakened their totemic power, they would listen to the stories of the elders sitting on the stone blocks in front of the house. They had imagined that when they awakened and had power, they would hold a banquet to show off their wealth. Now, their dreams were about to come true. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.